the, I don't know, is it the Russo-Crimean War? What is the official name of it? I know some people call it Putin's War. I want to put a blame on a particular person. I think it's much more than that, but trust me, World War II was not Hitler's war. It wasn't just driven by Hitler's ambitions or madness or whatever you want to say. Many more factors going into it. So we're going to get started here very well. We started obviously the live stream. Hoping people will have a chance to show up. Maybe I should in future start these with a countdown clock or something. I don't know. Yeah. Good. Okay. Just checking that out. So, and well, if you're watching this later, of course, you can post questions. Love to hear what's on your mind, whether to be answered in the future or just typed out answer. I don't know. Right. Okay. I'm going to sort of make this as an episode here in a moment. Yes, opening up a can of Coke so I can keep talking. Let's see. Okay. How do I want to intro this? Hello, concerned people of the world. This is Gamer1745, and we're going to be taking a look at the Ukraine-Russian war, Putin's war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, however you want to call it. I don't know what his history is going to end up calling this. And after we do that, we're also going to be looking at the, I don't know, Taiwan Crisis, as it might be currently called, and that is actually giving me more current worries. Excuse me. Wow, me currently here in the U.S. more worries. I'm sure there's more worries by people in Ukraine. What's going on for the Ukraine? But before we get into all of that, gotta say, if you're new around here, love for you to hit that subscribe button so I can see you here more often. And I hope with everybody, I'm hitting that like button, and I'm sure Brady has already hit. Sure, Brady Lawson, long-time viewer here, can't stay too long. I understand, Brady. Now, if you have any questions, please post them, and I will do my best to answer them regarding either Taiwan or Ukraine. And I do have stuff prepared that I'm going to talk about during this, but I am very much keeping this as, if you're watching later, as a chat with viewers that have comments, questions, concerns, information, whatever. So I will be responding to that. But first, I wanted to take a look here with the update currently. Now, I want to say straight up, I don't trust anybody's information on what's going on in Ukraine, because it is still very much in that period of fog of war. And all sides, because there's more than just two, all sides in this conflict have an agenda. Whether I agree with the agenda or disagree, they have an agenda. So they're going to highlight that agenda. So we have to keep that in mind here. And so this is but I think I don't know. Like I say, I don't trust, but a good source of information is the British Ministry of Defence. I follow their Twitter account, and multiple times a day they update their, and we will be looking at some of their updates, their current understanding of what's going on in Ukraine. So I'm not saying it's objective, because they, even in their basic Twitter feed headline, says we stand with Ukraine or whatever. So obviously they are partisan. I'm not, again, saying it's incorrect. Just keep that in mind. And hello, Arno. Very good to have you watching everywhere. Do absolutely appreciate it. Okay, so into the meat of this. This is yesterday's map that they published. Blue lines are likely Ukrainian advances. Red, or arrows, or however you want to call them, lines, arrows. Red are Russian likely advances, likely access of advance, here, whatever. But in current boundaries of controlled and contested areas. So I think that's the nuclear. I'm not great on the details of, I know Sevastopol, Yalta, Kharkov, Kiev is up this way. I do know the general geography, but not detailed. So we have this here. I would say roughly, okay, my estimation of the original intention was like a 4-day aggressive war, and then the war was going to be over. So now what was going to happen after that war? I think they were going to install or reinstall a, and I may slip up sometimes here today, call it Soviet, but putting a Russian puppet in Kiev. I don't think it was like, direct annexation of Ukraine to Russia, but I do believe this territory was roughly to be a direct annexation of territory to Russia, and the rest set up as a puppet state. That's my evaluation of the situation there, of the goals of Putin. So keep that in mind. Now, today's update here, and we will look at some of this. Since August 29th, 2020, the Ukrainian armed forces have been conducting a renewed offensive operation in the south of Ukraine. One element of this offensive is an ongoing advance on the broad front of the western Dnipro River, focusing on 3 axes of Russian-occupied Kherson Oblast, or region, I believe that would be the rough translation. The operation has limited immediate objectives, but Ukrainian forces have likely achieved a degree of tactical surprise, exploiting poor logistics, administration, and leadership of the Russian armed forces. That is a very big problem, is administration and particularly leadership of the Russian armed forces is very poor, has been seen. With fighting also continuing on the Donbass and Kharkov sectors. Okay, so we're talking Kherson down here, Donbass and Kharkov up over here, just to give everyone an idea. A key decision for Russian commanders in the coming days will be where to commit any operational reserves they can generate. Yes, Russia is having a significant manpower problem. Let's see what Arno's saying here. The Russians are performing underwhelming. Even without weapons from the West, the Russians would have gotten further, but not likely wanted to what they originally were going after. Yes, haven't. Okay, well, on objectives, yes, the initial objective of domination, I guess that would be a good term, of Ukraine has utterly and completely failed. And think it's $13 billion or something additional to everything else. Biden is now asking for more money for Ukraine. Well, I don't know. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I don't know that the West needs to put any more significant resources into, and we will look at some of the stuff here, into Ukraine, because the West has already achieved its goal. Not won the war or anything, but it achieves its goal. And what is the goal of the West? And there's mission creep there. Hello from the Philippines, or hello from the U.S. to the Philippines. Hello, Michael Arnez. Good to have you here. Hope I'm getting that right. We will be talking about Taiwan, the Philippines, and whatnot a bit later. So, Michael over on Facebook, if you want to stay around for that, we will be getting to that very important topic soon. Be a bit, but we will get there. The goal was to stop Russian or Putin, or however you want to say it, expansionism. That is, my understanding, is the West's goal, is to stop expansionism. Well, we've done that. I don't know what the final boundary situation is going to be with Ukraine, but this has massively exhausted Russia, and will stop for the foreseeable future, in my opinion, expansion into places like the Baltic states and others, Poland, wherever, down in Georgia, way down here. So we've achieved that goal. We've stopped, what my big concern is expansion further and further west, or potentially in other directions. So that is an important goal. We've achieved that goal. Russia is exhausted. Had the Germany's invasion of either something like Czechoslovakia or Poland taken this long and still not achieved, conquest of Warsaw, and the Soviets hadn't invaded the eastern half of Poland, had the Poles still had the eastern half of Poland, Hitler's regime probably would have survived if there hadn't been a general war with the West. But the idea of Hitler expanding, and also hello, Lord Samuel, their general expansion of the war or German territory would have stopped at that point, even if eventually they would have won in Poland. If it had been a long, exhausting war, that would have stopped Hitler. And, it's partly the goal of what's going on then and now. So we've done that. That is achieved. Now, talking to some people and reading articles, we can also see here, and hello, Poop Hunter, I was stoked to see Ukraine doing an offensive. Yes. Let's look at, I have a story prepared for that one that we can talk about here. Russia failed in their lightning war and bogged down into a war of attrition. Absolutely, that's exactly what's happened. It is a combination. Yeah, it's a war of attrition, which is also an insurgency that they're having to deal with as well. So, Kherson counteroffensive, cheered by Ukrainians enduring Russian rule, is the headlines of this Financial Times. Just to give you my sources here on this Financial Times article, and it was filed or updated or whatever yesterday. So just to give time here, it was the news. Many in Kherson waited to hear blah 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 the pro-Ukrainian activity of those who remain. I'm not planning on reading all this, but I want to take a quick look at what they're talking about here. Kherson remains the only provincial Ukrainian capital captured intact by the Russian forces since President Vladimir Putin's full invasion of the country in February. It's, according to this, a hotbed of resistance and partisan activity. Again, these are people that have been in the region. This week, there are rumors that Kirill Stemenos, I'm probably butchering, Moscow appointed governor of Kherson, has fled after he recorded a geological video from the hotel in Russia. Okay, but the extent of the Ukrainian count remains unclear. Right, like I say, everything is the fog of war. It has left the Russian military bloggers who claim, and I already had somebody talk to me about this. I think the term was crazy, but they used who claim Russia's suicide attack is failing without offering evidence. To fill the information gaps. And there's a lot of information war going on. Again, I want to stress, I have a viewpoint here. I have a who I'm more for versus other people. I don't claim to be nonpartisan in this, but I will try my best to give you the best evaluation of what is actually going on. And so the fact that we're not taking Kherson yet does not mean the Operation South has stalled or failed. Advisor to President Zelensky's administration. Locals swim the Dnieper River, pausing when an explosion goes off to see where the smoke is. Yeah. Okay, so what I wanted to say about this is I don't think this attack, whether it's an offensive or counteroffensive, is meant to throw the Russians out of Ukraine, and it's only a bad idea if the offensive is pursued against targets that are causing high casualty rates, meaning if you do a coordinated, and it does seem to be a coordinated offensive, and you hit a lot of places, you don't have to push hard on your offensive. You just hit them and see where the collapses happen. See where the platoon that's dug in somewhere that falls back, or the platoon that isn't dug in gets pushed back. So the offensive keeps the enemy having to react to you instead of you waiting to react to them. So I think that idea, if it's put out there, as a probing attack, not as a determined push on a specific objective, is a very good idea. Is flat land, and so it's kind of surprising. Yeah. And hello, Karen May Noro Gono. Sorry, I'm probably butchering it. Hello from the General Santos, Philippines. Can't watching your stream. Sorry to hear you can't watch the stream, but thanks for showing up. Wonder how it will go. Yeah. One thing for sure is Russian logistics will be way worse than the fact that the Ukrainian army is more limited or more united than at the start of the war. Yes. Ukraine is fractionalized. So what we're seeing, in my opinion, is the distracting, the needing to Russian pushing is pushed over here. Let's push back here. What is Russia going to do with its reinforcements, shall we call it? Are they going to add them to the push over here, or are they going to send them over here to stabilize the front line? That is my understanding of the goals and objectives from what it looks like. And I know it's very scant evidence of it. Russia kind of needs to do what Lord Samuel's saying, what the Soviet Union did in their counteroffensive against the Third Reich when they were on the defensive. Yes. Hello, Spanner and the work. The offensive is shorter supply lines than into the Donbass, and it pulls pressure off. Yes, it does pull pressure off the other parts of Ukraine, most certainly. And looking at supply lines, this is where I was going to go. So I look at what little we know of the offensive. It seems like a good idea. It seems like a way to give a morale boost to the Ukrainian army, to the Ukrainian people, that we're doing something, so long as it isn't pushed too hard, too recklessly, shall we say. Now, this is something that I was concerned about. Here they're calling it. This is again from the Eurasian Times. I don't know much about this source, either updated or the the original article is from August 3rd. I know it had been out. Okay. The Panzerhaubitze 2000s, the really nice Germans, I really like these. Howitzers are breaking down in the fight against Russia. Ukraine informs Berlin of defects. With Ukraine reporting having lost several U.S.-supplied high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, and the M777 lightweight howitzers, while losing nearly all of its Soviet-era artillery munitions, the military prospects for Kiev look bleak. I disagree with this. I think, like I said, I don't know the source, but I think it has the opposite agenda of what's going on, or the Russian agenda in mind. According to Der Spiegel report, mid-June, Kiev had informed Berlin about some of the 7 Panzerhaubitze 2000 tracked self-propelled artillery delivered late in June were malfunctioning in urgent need of repair. Snags emerged after extensive shelling of Russian positions for more than 100 shells a day. Okay. What I'm concerned with, this map is prettier to look at. Not as reckless as Doolittle rate. Well, the Doolittle rate, I think, would be the definition or the demonstration of recklessness at its core. So the supply lines, as Spanner and the work talks about. Well, the supply lines of Ukraine are longer than the supply lines for Russia, because the supply lines for Ukraine are all over the, go to the United States and to Europe. I don't know, to the rest of Europe. I don't know if they're importing anything produced in other parts of the world. And by supply lines, I mean wherever, and I don't quite know, I could figure it out, I'm sure, the Lockheed Martin plant that's making the NLAW missiles. That's their supply line. Is from that Lockheed Martin plant that is right now today. I know it's Saturday, but they're very well likely producing NLAW missiles. If not, they will be producing them on Monday. That they're producing. It's from that plant to Kherson Oblast. Okay, that is the supply lines of Ukraine. The supply lines for Russia is somewhere in Russia, whether it's Moscow or a lot of factories are to the east of Moscow, where they're producing the Russian munitions to the front. So, and through the war-torn countries, the supply line is actually longer through Ukraine, because although currently much of Ukraine, I think, outside of the areas highlighted in this graphic here, are at relative peace. At least that's what I get from my contacts in Ukraine. meaning they're not facing daily airstrikes or continuing attacks in other parts of Ukraine, that they have to move them from, say, the Polish border up to the front, where the Russians come to, over here. And I'm guessing, I'm not sure, regional boundaries. I guess these sort of reddish lines are railways. It seems like it because they go to towns. So railways to here. So the supply lines. Now, again, talking to some people, and I do have one good contact in Ukraine. Don't want to specify more. He knows who he is, and he's been open here, but I don't need to tag him more publicly. Talked to him 2 days ago on some information along these lines. And the problem for both sides is exhausting supplies of munitions, more so than people on Ukraine side, and we'll get on to that in a moment, but is the consumption of munitions. At the start of this, and I keep using this because I have hard numbers on this, at the start of this conflict, or within the first couple of weeks, Lockheed Martin stated, they gave the exact number, but it was just a little over 6,000 NLAW missiles were produced a year at full capacity production. And I don't think that full capacity of production means 24/7. I think it means 5 days a week, 8 or 10 hours a day or something like that. In a peacetime production. And at that point, I don't know that they've I don't know if they've upped production from that, seeing that the war is lasting longer. And so what we're seeing here is the West selling or giving, I don't know all the definitions of that, how much is, because part of the way it works is the U.S. will give $13 billion in aid to Ukraine. Now, maybe $1 billion of it is flown in on cash and goes into somebody's Swiss bank account, because there have been people that have fled Ukraine and have been caught, including politicians' wives, have been caught with multi-millions of dollars in their luggage of euros and US dollars as they've left the country. So some of it may be going into corruption, and trust me, the Ukrainian government has been very, very corrupt. I'm not sure which government, the Russian or the Ukrainian, has greater levels of corruption in it, but both of them are very corrupt. But it's not so much that Ukraine is given, like I say, $13 billion, and then what do they want to spend it on? No, it's more like, okay, we need to give Ukraine $13 billion, so they spend it with Lockheed Martin to buy, and I'm just using these as a real world example, the NLAW missile. So those, and the NLAW missile, is $1 billion. No, a few $100,000 or whatever it is per missile. And so they're buying however many missiles, as well as other things, obviously, too. So, what are all of the costs in there? So the technicality is that the U.S. is giving money to Ukraine, and Ukraine is buying weapons with that money. So we might technically be selling them the missiles, but we're giving them the money to buy the missiles with. So it's sort of that circular argument there. And with that, that can't continue at the current rate of exhaustion. Because there just isn't enough production. We've looked at the Panzerhaubitze 2000. I often don't understand nations. The Dutch I don't know, 10 years ago, was trying to offload some of their Panzerhaubitze 2000s and, sell them. And they're having trouble at the time finding customers for it. I don't know if it was those or whether they were German PZH 2000s that Canada leased, didn't buy, they leased them to go use them in Afghanistan. So they were flown into Afghanistan and used. And there again, so these may be the exact same howitzers, maybe, I'm not sure, that Ukraine is using, meaning that they had served in Afghanistan. I don't understand why the Dutch want. I understand why the nation, because they look like, the next 2 or 3 years we're not going to be likely invaded. We don't need as many artillery units, so let's downscale our army. I get that idea, but I don't understand why selling off weapon systems that, when people really start needing weapon systems, they're worth more than gold. And so, I understand why you would mothball them, put them away in sheds somewhere so they don't, deteriorate, and store them up instead of keep them in service and pay the soldiers to work them. So operate them. So I understand budgets and reducing budgets, but I didn't understand why they wanted to sell the equipment. Yes, thanks, Arno. Please do give this stream an upvote if you're on YouTube, and anywhere else you can just hit the follow or subscribe button. Road's not the worst. Corruption in Ukraine, I'm shocked. Yes, very much from Casablanca. On our movie night a week ago, we watched Casablanca. Ukraine got equipment in bad condition too, from nearby country. Yes, and so a lot of countries, now Poland and others, were wanting to give up their equipment with the idea of getting new equipment, more modern equipment, from either West Germany or the United States. Oh, I said West Germany. From Germany or the United States. That I understand, you're trying to turn over your surplus equipment. Now, armies, nations often like big shiny toys. So Panzerhaubitze 2000s or whatever, and they're really cool to have. But do you really... Is it better to give the Ukrainians a howitzer or 100 drones? Not the big expensive American drones, but smaller drones that you can put like a mortar bomb or something that you can drop from that drone. Let's say 1,000 drones, because drones are, those howitzers are expensive, and all those 155 millimeter rounds are expensive. So would it be better to have one Panzerhaubitze 2000 or 1,000 drones that you can put into the field and get close enough to, you just got to get close enough, and some of them can have several miles of range, that you fly over your enemy and push the drop button, and a 80 millimeter mortar round goes boom right down on the enemy that you were looking at. So we can, with that simple demonstration, what is going to be, and realize the immensity of this front line here. 9, 10, 24 Panzerhaubitze 2000s. Hell, if I start up here and drive down to here, half of them are just going to break down from driving, even if they were in like new condition. So they're not going to be able to affect a huge portion of the front line. So I've often wondered, and I don't blame the Ukrainians for going, hey, yeah, you'll give us these and you'll train to a degree, because I'm sure they're rushing through the training service, and I'm sure they're not maintaining the vehicles as well, and then of course spare parts for the things that break, for whatever equipment it is, that you're going to have. So how useful, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have them, I'm not saying they have no use, but how overall useful are 24 or less, because there's like 9 or whatever that they were given, and I don't know if they're going to get more. How useful are these howitzers? Yeah, at a particular offensive, they may be very useful, but in the overall war, wouldn't it be better to buy drones? Because we will be looking at drones when it comes to China here shortly. The drones are going to be damned effective. If they get shot down, you just lose them, you haven't even lost a person. And they don't have good countermeasures at all, but they definitely don't have the equivalent of a harm missile, meaning an anti-radiation missile. Those are designed to launch, and I know a lot of you know this, but not everybody does. To launch the missile, and it homes in on radars to blow up radars to keep attacking aircraft safe. You destroy the radars, it's safer to fly in your attacking aircraft. So I don't think anybody has developed effective battlefront counter missiles that are looking for drone radio signals and home in on them and blow up the operator. Let's see what Arno's saying. My government wanted to save money. They have been doing that since the 1990s. Yes, in 97 we lost our 1st Infantry Division, and a couple of years later our tank, and now they're shitting their pants and want to buy more and more. Yes, they back in the 90s they thought history was over and the need for large-scale militaries was done. Sure, an expeditionary force to, I don't know, go save your ships and crew members that have been captured by pirates in Somalia or some equivalency, so special forces that rescue some Dutch people somewhere in some, African country or whatever might be needed in the future, but big infantry divisions and armored divisions were no longer needed. I know that was the thinking, and it reinforces the idea that the American puppets in Europe, called states, are just that, meaning all you Western Europeans, you're just American puppets. There is, in fact, that equipment are more expensive to make and buy. Oh, yes. Well, it was like during the latter part of the Cold War, the amount of square footage to make the peacetime amount of expensive late Cold War aircraft was approximately equal to what it was at the peak of World War II in making those massive spamming out of aircraft. And of course the aircraft, both time and cost, had spiraled up since then. So yeah, it's very expensive, and a lot of new tech got introduced during the war. So I guess I don't need to belabor this point, is that the technical levels of the equipment appropriate for Ukraine needs to be taken better in account for it, and continue to dump money into Ukraine in unlimited batches is, I think, a mistake. Now, also, this is the other thing here that is concerning here I wanted to bring up here, is heavy fighting continues in southern Ukraine, including shelling of the Eindower district near the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And yes, that is here on this map. Despite war in Ukraine, September Russian military exercises. Oh, and this is here. And I wanted to highlight. So yes, the nuclear power plant needs to have power going to it at all times to circulate water, to keep it from overheating, and it's best that that doesn't happen. I mean, best that it keeps the power on there, and so that's a problem. And then for you Europeans, because I was in and around Europe when the Chernobyl well, it was after the Chernobyl thing happened, but the waste clouds of nuclear whatever coming over Europe, that it blows into Europe. So yeah, you and Europe will get the effects of it. Despite the war, Russia's standard military exercise, Volks 22, the annual joint strategic exercises marking the culmination of military training year, Russia publicly claimed 50,000 troops will take part. However, it's unlikely more than 15,000 personnel will actively be involved. Now, my understanding that this, from other readings, if I'm putting this all together right, is a multinational training force that normally has India and several other of the near abroad nations involved in it. This year they added China, which I think is interesting, because China and India are on a near war footing at the moment. So I don't know if that's going to continue as it has in the past, because of India and China both participating in, but we see China moving closer. But this is likely to be a lot less personnel involved, and Russia's military performance in Ukraine has highlighted the Russian military strategic exercises such as Vostok have failed to sustain the military's ability to conduct large-scale complex operations. Such events are highly scripted, do not encourage initiative, and primary aim is to impress Russian leaders and international audiences. Yes, and I think much of the exercises that they conduct is that they get ready the forces that are going to participate in them, and those do well. I don't think overall the training levels of the Russian military have been very good. At our height, we had over 900 tanks, thousands, this is Arno saying, thousands of armored vehicles and artilleries, 210 F-16s, a standing army of over 200,000 men. For a small country, that's big. Now we have 30,000 men and 52 Panzerhaubitzen and 18 tanks. Do you see that? And it was a big downsizing. Absolutely. The USA did that in Iraq and Afghanistan too, handing out bags of money all over the place. Never looked too hard at who was getting it. Well, we'll see there they were handing out, I think it was, whether you want to call it bribing money or money to sustain militias, I think would be looking at that they were just handing it out locally. And it's a Middle Eastern tactic. It was to keep the local allies supplied with things like money to give them to pay their supporters for them to buy food and pay the rent and whatnot. I think maybe we can add the fact that Russia doesn't have an NCO corps too. Yeah, their NCO, they do have one, but it's not a very effective one, shall we say. That is a very problem, which is a NCO. So this is, I had a real, we lost contact. He moved back east. But I had for years a really good friend who was a Marine Corps NCO. Ended up in counterintelligence in the Marine Corps, and then sort of an Arab area specialist doing that kind of stuff. So, very good NCO. He was very enamored of the Israeli system, in which basically everybody starts out as privates and then you work your way up the officer chain. I took time to me who only had some ROTC training, try to explain that is not a good system for large forces. And again, he's a Marine Corps guy, so he's looking at a relatively small force. I mean, there's 100,000+ of them, but a relatively small force in looking at the Marine Corps, that you don't want to have too old of generals or too out of date generals. So you want them to start as lieutenants, because he always complained that he only knew like 2 good officers, or 2 or 3, I forget what the number is. One of them was a VMI graduate, the other one was from Annapolis, which most Marine Corps officers aren't. And he was dealing with lieutenants and captains. And lieutenant is there just to sort of make sure that the orders get done and learned. That's his job. It's the NCO job to actually run the platoon, to actually, in combat or whatever else. It's the NCO's job. You shouldn't really have to have a lieutenant there, because the NCOs are supposed to know the job better than the lieutenant. So the lieutenant is thus there to learn what's going on and to make sure that, when Captain or Major so-and-so gives some orders, that they actually get followed and not goofed off or whatever. So, NCOs are a critical element, but NCOs, once you get good NCOs, they should not become officers, because they are NCOs, not officers. So, and officers are supposed to get good at maybe captain, but definitely majors and above. You're supposed to, weed out the not so goods and train up them. So that is that. Hello, Eric. Good to have you here. An effective NCO Corps is way more better for large scale and incompetent NCO Corps. Flexibility is in tactics. Yeah, well, the Soviets, and I use that term appropriately, Soviets were known to have very, very inflexible tactics, and very much seen as such in the Afghanistan war that they fought. So they're not very flexible in doing anything. So yeah, that is an important element. Now, we're all seeing Russia's failure here. I mean, this is an utter failure, of course, as we talked about earlier on, with the invasion of Ukraine. That was supposed to be like 4 days of active campaign, and then the rest would be, mopping up exercises. That once this war is concluded, to whatever degree it's going to be concluded, I think a lot of people, and particularly politicians, and most of them have no military experience nowadays, are going to conclude that Russia is a paper tiger, or not really dangerous, so they can go back to the Dutch were. Hello, Beamslam. Good to have you here. The Soviets have political commissars. That's also another problem too. As Arno was saying, go back to, like I say, the Russian expansion has been stopped. And that isn't stopped for history, it's stopped for the foreseeable future. But they're going to go back to, we don't need to spend too much on the military. Well, what happens after this type of situation, and this is more than, because, again, I think it was my Ukrainian friend pointed out that, well, after the I always blank on names, the not Azerbaijan, sorry, chat, maybe you can help me out, the Russian war against the Islamic minorities down here in the Caucasus region. Sorry, I'm blanking on it. I do this once in a while. I don't know why I names. Where they were in there, that showed a lot of their deficiencies there. And I'm not thinking of Georgia. I'm thinking going after the Muslim group, the one that sent some mercenaries recently into Ukraine. And that didn't set up a reform wave in Russia. Well, the border countries like Poland, for example, may strengthen. The border countries are. Yes, the border countries are. But I think a lot of the Western politicians, not Eastern or Central European politicians, whatever you want to call it now, but the Western politicians are going to be lulled into a false sense of security. Because I think, maybe nothing is going to happen. Not Georgia, Spanner, but I believe it starts with it was the Muslim. not Azerbaijan, not Armenia. The one that back in the 90s. No, not Syria. That's the Russian invasion down in the Caucasus. The ones that produce all the terrorists that like went after the Russian opera house and whatnot. You guys may have forgotten the name too, or even forgotten the war. Well, you often after the bad performance here, and I think a lot of it is to do with corruption in the Russian military. UN Security Council is fucking useless because of the veto power. Well, the U.S. Yeah, UN is useless. The UN, yeah, not ISIS. Hello, Yoshihisa. But sorry, I'm blanking on things here. Is with this such wide-scale failure, I think it very well might be seen as a a catalyst for reform in the Russian military. So in 20 years, Chechnya, that's it. Thanks, Beamslam. Chechnya, that's what I was blanking on. Thank you. I always blank on these things. Yeah, the Chechen wars. Thank you, Beamslam. Somebody got it. Good. Thank you. Yeah, I sort of know what I'm talking about, but I don't know. There's particular names. For some reason, I get there. Yes, Chechnya. I think that 20 years from now, we may see a very, very different. However it's spelled. Yes, but yeah, you get that. There's I think multiple spellings because translating Cyrillic into Western letters don't have always a defined set of spelling. Posted it out. Okay, cool. Yes, Eric went to visit a military aircraft museum today, or at least partially. He's posted some of those, and I hope there'll be some in our forum on Discord here. So yes, I see that he has. So if you want to check out our Discord, I think it should be linked around forum. There's a lot of interesting things going on there. You can see his photos from his visit today. Russia's doing what the USSR did during the war, reforming their military during the war. Yes. Okay, yeah, Lord Samuel. And exactly, because as particularly Eric, I know, has pointed out, and we'll get to this just in a second, this is sort of the equivalent of the Winter War for the Soviet Union. Invasion of Finland leading up to World War II. This is sort of the Winter War for Russia. Now, I was asked, and let's see, I think I have, there we go. Let's look down here. Russian bot here who, despite my name, I am a neutral in the war. However, I feel the need to be serious, look into Western media in Ukraine when it comes to how hush-hush they're being about losses. Okay. They're keeping it under lock and key in Russia, he very much admits. Every time I look Ukrainian losses, their army, I find an article, 1 out of 1,000 for their problem. The DPR, as of August 8th, listed the Ukrainian losses as 197,000 losses or higher. The DPR is one of the breakaway factions in eastern Ukraine, and still puts higher losses than the Pentagon. Pentagon puts 80,000 Russians lost in this fight. So I asked my Ukrainian friend his opinion, and he did a little bit of digging. And from official Ukrainian sources for military losses, put it approximately 9,000. And they put at about 100,000 for Russian losses. He thought Russian losses at 80,000 was a bit light on losses. Um, so that is basically 10-1 in military losses. So that great name Russia. Yeah, I think it's meant to be ironic, and not that he's a pro-Russian, as he says. I don't know. So yes, we have, and there's been other civilian losses here. Now, what I will say, and okay, 9,000. So probably that number. Well, I'm sure that number is not exactly correct, but it's probably less than 15,000. But probably not. Probably, yeah, it's probably less than 15,000. It's probably not more. I mean, it's probably not more than 15,000, and it's probably not less than 9,000 military losses. Now, if they'd even been equivalent losses, it still doesn't so much matter, because so long, it's the price of having a nation, people. The U.S., at least up until, I think all of the wars up until like the Vietnam War, all the casualties in all the wars that the U.S. fought, except for the American Civil War, all of the wars put together, all the American casualties, and I think included the Revolutionary War, were less casualties than in the American Civil War. The American Civil War had more casualties than their losses in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, the American Revolutionary War, the War of 1812. We lost more because with the Civil War, it's losses on both sides that were counted, Confederate as well as Union losses. That was the highest casualties, and I don't even know if we've yet caught up to the casualties in there. And so, but that was, a war fought to keep our nation together, the Civil War. So wars are the cost of having a nation. A lot of people have forgotten this. So, if this is Winter War Redux, Barbarossa 2 is only 2 years away. Well, yeah, if it's that kind of thing. But like I was saying earlier, Spanner, in the work, I think the West has stalled out Russian expansionism now for the next. I think for Putin's term, because he's an old guy. I don't think we're going to see him rushing into the Baltic states, which I would have. Had he had his 4-day war, I think the Baltic states would have been next. So I think that has been stalled out. I don't think we're going to see any Russian expansion outside of whatever might be happening in Ukraine for the foreseeable future. Well, about 11,000 of equipment is probably at least 22,000 casualties. Well, we're talking deaths, not wounds here. Casualties. So that's my understanding here. Is we're talking deaths. That number is deaths. So you can probably put the number of casualties, and we even talked about it with my contact again. He might even show up here today. I don't know, but I'm not going to name him just for security reasons. And he's just doing open source research, but he is Ukrainian and is somewhat involved in the military. I don't want to specify at the moment. Nothing high level, is involved as in like platoon level type activities. So I don't even want to make it even if any intelligence services want to start digging into it. No, I've talked to somebody on the ground in there, and I do mean literally talk to. That probably the wounded are 4 times as high. So in the 30 to 40,000 wounded range. So if you're doing that, then they're not related to equipment losses. So my guess is between if you add dead and wounded beam slam, yes. So and more severely wounded. Oh, absolutely. But we were talking dead. It was what we were talking. In that 9,000 number was listed, for KIA, killed in action, was basically that number. So yes, 30 to 40,000 I would put as overall casualties, or a bit more. But okay. So if 10,000 roughly dead, 4,000 or 40,000 wounded or so, then you're getting 50,000. So, but that's 80,000 dead Russians is my understanding, is the number. So again, a lot higher wound levels. But like I go back, I think is to the equipment, is the supply lines, the equipment is the major limiting factor. Now, what's going to happen in the future? Obviously, I don't know, but some telling things. Yes, I think Russian expansionism has stopped outside of the Ukraine. I think the Ukrainian, Zelensky and others that are, if their public stance, because there's one thing that's public and another thing is private, if their public stance is equal to their private stance that Russia must evacuate all of Ukraine, and including Crimea, then that is a mistake at this point. Because I don't think at the current, because Russia could collapse at any moment. It could just collapse. We saw, it starts with a D, the Russian, the daughter of the Russian thinker, Dugin, Russian Dugin, that's right, Dugin, was assassinated. Whether it was she was targeted, or I think it was he was the target, and I think they just took her as a target of opportunity. Is we could see a coup, we could see some sort of assassination attempt against Putin. We could see a Russian collapse, but barring that, I don't think Russia's going to collapse, and I don't think Russia yet is going to just give up. Now, we have seen the Russians abandon Snake Island down here and open the way for shipping to go in and out of Odessa without molestation. So civilian shipping is now coming in and out of Odessa, and Russia is no longer targeting. So Russia, and there was some agreement to limit Ukrainian strikes against Russian naval assets or something within all that, and I don't know how much of that is going on. So there's talks between Russia and Ukraine and whatever third parties involved in going on with that. So there's probably continuing talks on other subjects. So if Russia is in a weak enough position that they're willing to allow, and I think it's as much as Russia is unable to truly enforce it, so you might as well allow them commercial shipping in and out of Odessa is a telling factor. So if Zelensky can get some of his land back and get a some sort of ceasefire or peace agreement, that would be good. And I don't see that as a likelihood so long as the West is continuing to pour in military assets and the money to pay for them in an unrestricted fashion. And I think that is a problem. Time for Japan to take back their rightful clay, doing what they should have been doing, done in World War II. Well, Japan and Russia are now technically back at war because they have broken off their negotiations over the Sakhalin Island and whatnot. So they are at war, though to the best of my knowledge, no shots have been fired, no aggressive actions have been taken by either side. But they are now, since there is no longer a talks or a truce, ongoing talks, they're technically back in conflict, maybe we should say, over with Russia right now. So yeah, that's where we're going to go next, and then coming up. So okay, does anybody else? Let me see. Is there any other? I want to see if I the Pacific, British military defense, German. Okay, I think I've covered all of the points talking about the casualties. I think eventually the scale of casualties will come to Russia, general Russian knowledge. They've had more casualties so far in the Ukraine war than they did during the whole Afghan war of approximately 10 years. So, and that's what really collapsed the Soviet Union as the sort of the final straw. I mean, it was the final log. It wasn't just a straw, but it collapsed it. I don't know if it's enough to collapse the Putin regime, so I think the West needs to start limiting the amount of resupply to the Ukrainians, with the idea that Zelensky and crew must negotiate a settlement, and that is reasonably acceptable. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to get Mariupol back. I don't know if, all the Donbass, which had already sort of been occupied, they're going to get that back. I doubt they're going to get the Ukraine back. But if they can get some of this territory back down here, sort of like Kherson and the eastern half of this area here, western half, sorry, that might be a suitable situation. One thing I wanted to know. Is that over here? No. Okay, that may be here. Let's. No, it isn't there. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to save one, but not seeing it right offhand. Is it? I can't find it quickly. Ah, yes. I think this, I don't know about the wording here, but I think this might be an idea for the future Ukrainian flag, which is sort of merged with the American Gadsden flag, which would have the original sign. I think it's something about Snake Island, but is "Don't Tread on Me," or Snake Island F off flag. But that might be a good symbol for Ukraine going forward as a national identity, as it were. The chats in case somebody is not that. Yeah. Here. Okay, so I think that's it for Ukraine for today. I am going to now jump to the Taiwan crisis. So if you guys, which I actually think right now are more of a problem going forward than Ukraine, but it's going forward as opposed to immediate. But okay, I'm going to make an episode on it. So again, everyone who's made it this far in the video, because I will be posting this as a standalone video, thank you so much for watching. Please post comments, questions, tips, information below. If you haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe. Hope to see you around. Hope everyone is safe. I really do. All right, now let's go over to Taiwan here. And for that, I'm going to open this up because we're going to mainly be using this as a source here. Yeah, I think we will just mostly be using, let's see if I can get a good background image here. We'll work our way up from here. Yeah, okay, that's some of the stuff I want to look at. The Taiwan Crisis. And it is something that, if it were to explode, will have massive effects around the world. Hello everyone, this is Gamer1745 here, and I'm going to take a look at what is going on with Taiwan. It is a critical element to the functioning of the world right now, and has massive effects if this were to explode. But before we get into that, this is like I said, Gamer1745. If you're new here, please, I hope I'm earning your subscription and hitting you that like button. And if you have any questions about China, Taiwan, whatnot, I am not an expert, but we're going to take a look at some of the stuff and sort of do a bit of a strategic / historical analysis of it. So I hope you post your questions, comments below. Love hearing from you. So, right. China, or the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, have both claimed to be the lawful, rightful governments of China. The Republic of China on Taiwan has been, in recent years, moving away from the idea that they are the Republic of China and becoming just Taiwan. This is a problem for China, who, for various reasons, and it's not just communist reasons, but for cultural reasons. Chinese people have a stick up their ass, okay? They are sure that they are the greatest people, not on this planet really, because they're the middle kingdom. They're the kingdom, above them is heaven and below them is earth. So they're in the middle between heaven and earth. They're the middle kingdom. They are racist doesn't even cover it. They think that they're on another world from the rest of us barbarians out here around them. And this goes, way back. I'm sure that, I don't know how the Chinese dealt with the Mongol conquest in that viewpoint, but they are, but the Gadsden flag is a hate symbol and terrorist flag. Yeah, that's what some people want to make it out. That was an American flag, so is that America is hateful? Yeah, I think yeah, a lot of people think America is a terrorist and a hateful nation. So I guess, yeah, if you look at it that way. So China does not like the idea of a breakaway state. Taiwan was moving closer and closer to the idea of reunification because China was looking like, yeah, they're authoritarian, but maybe we should just get together. But with particularly with what's going on in Hong Kong, that the Taiwanese people, and I think they're in another election season now, but the Taiwanese people decided to go hard towards independence. And this is causing a problem for President Xi of China. And President Xi, from everything that I've read and everything that, and unlike what this guy, Gordon Chang, who is actually a fairly good analysis, but if you look at, he writes books, The Coming Collapse of China and whatnot. I think that's actually one of the titles of his book. He's been wrong. China, the Communist Party of China, is nowhere near collapse. Now, President Xi may be, because there's him and Frogman. The other guy, with the weird glasses, he's still around. He's still kicking around. Sorry. There's two major factions within the CCP, and they're at odds with each other, and it's a power game, and different members of different factions get arrested, often for corruption. Corruption is a nice generic charge that you don't have to have a solid basis for. Just call somebody corrupt and you get to arrest them. And we see whether it's the coronavirus, the current financial, based somewhat on real estate problems in economics in China now. President Xi needs or Xi, or however you pronounce his name, needs a win in his column. And I think coming up very shortly, there's a new leadership conference that is happening within the CCP, and she needs to look strong and good and like the continued future leader. So he would like to have a win with just saw Tim Pool. Tim Pool. Yes, well, Tim Pool talks about all kinds of things. Into all of this, Nancy Pelosi schedules a trip and then reschedules it a bit, but ends up having, that's the Speaker of the U.S. House, trip to Taiwan. And this really, really upsets China. And China does everything it can, and I mean that. It does everything it can to stop her visit to Taiwan. And that fails. And as I posted and did a YouTube short on it, it shows the weakness of China. Not that China's a super weak nation, it just shows that they were not able to, maybe embiggen this a bit more so you guys can see it a bit better. It shows that they were not able to change the behavior of the United States, as in not having her on official state visit. So the Speaker of the House, not the president, but the basically third in line of succession, because it's the president, it's then the vice president, and then the Speaker of the House is how it goes. So the third leading political figure in America, they couldn't stop her visit. And since then, there's been two other congressional. First one was a Democratic Democratic congressional delegation to Taiwan, and the second congressional group was, I believe, a Republican-based delegation to Taiwan. All of those flown in on American military jets, or transports, I should say. I think they were jets, but transports, flown in for official visits with the president of Taiwan. And I do want to see what Arno's saying. Yes, the U.S. is sending anti-shipping anti-air. Yes, I will get to some of that. The Chinese are not pleased. Yes, could escalate to the point of war breaks out, and the U.S. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, Arno. Is that this could break out into a major war? It really could, and I was very concerned that Ukraine could spiral out to a major war. Well, I am no longer concerned that Ukraine will spiral out into a major war so long as nothing is changing there, as in how it's being fought out by the different external participants. Meaning, so long as, shall we call it, NATO or the Western powers are only sending munitions, logistical support, weapons of those types into Ukraine, Putin is not going to start, and they just sent in a new submarine into the Mediterranean, another one, and it's playing hide and go seek with NATO navies in the Ukraine. But I don't think that submarine is going to sink any, launch any torpedoes or missiles at a NATO ship. I don't think the Western powers are going to drop depth charges or, it's really ASROC missiles or whatever fired at the submarine. I don't think anything like that's going to happen. I just think they're going to be playing, underwater tag, like, oh, hey, we spot you, and submarine goes away and comes back again, and oh, we spot, and how close can we sneak up on you? That kind of thing. We see that going on in the Mediterranean. So long as it's that, I don't think it's going to, and so long as Russia doesn't nuke Kiev or some other city, I don't see the Ukraine war spiraling outside of its current theater of operations. So, I think that is contained. This is not contained. So, I don't think... Okay. China has plans to invade Taiwan. China is planning on, not just has plans. I say that because the U.S., at least during, and I presume it still has a version of it, but during the interwar period, had a plan for war with Britain. Not that they thought it was likely, it was some planners, well, what happens if we have a war with Britain? What are we going to do? Kind of thing. Yeah, but it's more than that. China is planning on invading Taiwan. I truly, firmly believe that. Now, I'm not saying China has a date set for the invasion, that it's going to happen at any particular time, but it is planning on invading. And I'll tell you when it's going to invade. I know I just said, not the date. I don't have a date. It is going to invade as soon as it thinks it can physically, and the international repercussions won't be too bad. Okay? So whenever that time and place happens, I don't know, and we can see attacking Taiwan by sea here, a nice little analysis of what it understands of the zones and where it would be coming in. So once it has enough landing ships, enough submarines, enough aircraft and all of that stuff, once it thinks it has enough material to do it, and then it looks around at the world and goes, can we get away with it? Can we get away with it? Can we get away with it? And when that answer is yes, I think they're going to invade. Now, so this might not happen for 20 or 30 years, because maybe, and as we're seeing now, basically, Gazprom has announced, I think within the last 24 hours, that it is shutting down all, because of a leak. I'm sure there's a leak in it, in the pipeline, all stuff coming through Nord Stream 1. So boom, guys, they cut you off. Trump was right. There's a video around that they're posting around when Trump was at the UN and saying, man, Russia's going to cut you off, and literally cutting to the German delegation laughing at Trump. Ha ha ha. Hi, Germans. Hey, Germans out there. Have a nice time freezing this winter. And make sure you still shut down your last 3 nuclear power plants. And I'm not sorry. There's going to be people freezing this winter. Old people, young people, whatever. They're going to freeze this winter in Western Europe. Yeah, for the individual, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry for any of your countries out there. I know my friend Eric is having very, very high energy cost in Norway. I'm sorry for you as a person, but for Norway, not sorry. You've made your decisions to be dependent or selling off your electricity power or whatever the individual cases may be. You didn't listen. Yes, I know Trump has a potty mouth and he insults people. I want you to, anybody either live or later on, please give me one bad particular action, government type action. Not Trump said this. No, what one bad thing did Trump actually do? I'm not saying there are 0 bad things that Trump did. I'm not saying that. But show me what's like the worst thing Trump's government did. That he ordered, he had to. Please, please post that live now or later on. Again, Trump lies. Yeah, his hands are the biggest hands that were ever in the history of mankind, and he has the biggest audiences anybody in the history of mankind has ever had, and he'll say that probably again today. But does that matter? There was an interview, Bean Slam is saying, there was an interview with the Chinese ambassador to Denmark, and he repeatedly told the aim of China was to get Taiwan back by all means necessary, inclusive of military. He said this is in plain language. Yes, no, they say this. Now, of course, the nationalist Chinese, going back to Chiang Kai-shek, would say the exact opposite, in that their plan eventually is, of course, to get all of China back once the communist regime collapses. Yes, they are effectively at war with each other. And so this is not in any way me stating something radical or something that, Taiwan the government no longer in rhetoric talks about taking back over China. I'm sure if tomorrow somehow the CCP were to collapse and there was nothing but chaos, that they wouldn't accept overall rule and try to reestablish it, but that ain't going to happen, and they're not trying to make it happen. So, nice graphic here. Now, the Kinmen Islands, which are right here, and then there's some other islands up here, are actually, like this island here is actually part of Taiwan territory, and there's a few of these other things. So, here, from these rectangular boxes that are named, is where the amphibious staging zones are, the build-up rendezvous out at sea, and then, of course, potential invasion beaches, Taipei up here in the top. Okay, so that's setting the picture. I know it's a lot setting the picture. We don't get enough coverage here in America, in my opinion, of crises around the world. There's a civil war would be an overstatement, but because there has been a long-term civil war, but it's over. But there is a UNITA versus MPLA conflict over the very recent elections ongoing right now in Angola that my friend in Angola has been posting about and I've been following. There's also the Tigray civil war going on in Ethiopia, where there's well over 100,000 casualties. So there's wars going on around the world that are not well covered. But this, unlike those two, can spiral out of control. Because, like I said earlier, China tried to stop Nancy Pelosi from visiting Taiwan. It utterly failed. Now, it did, and we'll get to some of this here, it did do military exercises around Taiwan, disrupting air travel, disrupting ships. Not that they couldn't continue those two things. I do believe, and maybe still going on, all direct flights between, because there had been flights between Taiwan and China, and Taiwan and Hong Kong. I believe those have all stopped and have not resumed. I'm not sure on the resumption, but had stopped. But other flights around had to be radically redirected to less efficient directions to fly from Taiwan to, say, the Philippines or to Japan or to wherever, because of these exercises. And there is no, because both sides claim a lot of stuff, because again, there are controlled territories right along the coast of China. There is no consensus as to where the sea border is with Taiwan and China, and especially as China is claiming all of it, of course. But out over here is, right along about here, is the edge of Japan's economic zone, in which there's like a little island out there that they control that nobody lives on, but that is at least claimed by Japan. So some of the missiles and some of the exercise zone fell within Japanese economic zones or Japanese sea territory for economic done. Now, this has brought these actions, in my opinion, have externally, at least, maybe internally it's helped Xi out, but externally has had the opposite effect, because I presume the effect wasn't intended. How do we make more enemies, and how do we solidify world opinion to recognize Taiwan as an independent state? That is not, I presume, the goal of Chinese actions, but that is to some degree the effect of what is going on. And we're using Indo-Pacific News. This is basically a Twitter account. I believe it is based out of India. It has a very anti-Chinese viewpoint, a very pro-Indian viewpoint, just to give you who and what I'm using. Okay, this is an anti-drone gun. China, like I say, Kinmen Islands, I believe is where the incident or incidents have been happening. China has flown drones, I think unarmed. I think, I don't want to, and it's like a few miles. So it's not like it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles or like 4 or 5 kilometers. So it's far, but it's not too far beyond the range of civilian type drones. I think that's the type of thing. And we've seen some footage of, I've seen some footage of, as well as some still of Taiwanese military people throwing rocks up into the sky, basically because they're throwing them at the camera on the drone. And so they threw some rocks at one of the first drones that they noticed coming over. That was just sort of like the soldiers on the ground seeing the drone up there, and they picked up rocks and threw it at it, just like, so it's, yeah, it looks like something from Warhammer, absolutely. So it wasn't a planned, response. It was more just, I don't know whether they're privates or NCOs or officers or whatever, but people on the ground in the immediate area responded to it. And then since then, another drone has come back and they've shot it down. So again, unarmored aircraft or unmanned aircraft with Chinese that originated from the mainland of China, probably not just a couple of high school guys, could theoretically be, and China might want to at some point back off on whatever claims that oh no, that was just some civilians flying it, but probably, knowing China, it was a government sponsored flight over there. And so what so they sent that, so they shot one down. Well, since then, it has been, and this is what we're looking at, Taiwan moves anti-drone guns offshore due to China threat. On Friday, soldiers stationed on Kinmen Island, 10 kilometers, from the Chinese coast. Now, they could also be launched from a boat, even closer, so that's about 5 miles. fired flares multiple times to chase away Chinese drones. So this is an anti-drone weapon. What I believe it does, I'm not sure, but what I believe it does is a jamming device in essence. I don't know if it's electromagnetic pulse. It might be, but I think what it does is it jams the frequencies that would control a drone in that direction that you're pointing it at it. So it's focused and pointing in that direction to shut down the drone links to the control element. Now, if it's a high-tech American drone, you know, like that we've used to bomb people around the world, hello from America, those drones are designed that if they lose contact with their control, they're programmed to fly home. I don't think, unless this is some sort of electromagnetic pulse that actually fries the electronics on the drone itself. If it's just what I believe is a disruptor of its communication, if it's a high-tech drone, it would be programmed with the location to fly back to. But if it's like a lot of civilian drones that you hit a button and they come back to sort of their starting point, well, that's still in communication with their drone control element, because they know where it is and they know to come back to it. So that would shut that down. This is a higher tech that, you know, has a global connecting to global positioning elements and would fly it home to a runway unattached. What is, yeah, with the right technology. Wonder about the recoil and weight of a handful. Well, yeah, I don't know. Railguns, I don't know what the recoil is, because I know with every action there's an opposite reaction, but it's speeding something down a rail versus an explosive reaction that's pushing in two directions at the same time. So I don't know railgun recoil about. I just don't know. You know, there's a lot of things I don't know about. So, and as you can see, finger off trigger here. So he has good trigger discipline. We can see the trigger there. And the reason well, one, you don't want to disrupt necessarily all electronic communication around you, and two, presumably pulling the trigger uses up a lot of battery power. So you want to point it, get it on target, point it, and disrupt the drone's connection to its control unit here. Now, getting to what Arno talked about earlier here. U.S. announces a $1.1 billion arms package to Taiwan. Now, this, to my understanding, people, again, I don't know all the details and I have not read the article. This is not the U.S. giving money to Taiwan. This is a sales package that Taiwan is actually paying for. So unlike Ukraine, these people, the Taiwanese are paying the $1.1 billion, not the U.S. is giving them money to then buy from the U.S. That's my understanding. Okay, so, and includes, although it does, 1.9, so okay. 355 million for Harpoon air-to-sea missiles. Okay. Now, the Harpoon can be launched from the air, I believe. Because I know the Exocet can and does. Though the U.S., I don't think generally, and I'm not up on all of it, there's normally an air launch for the most. I'm used to the Harpoons are shipboard missiles. So sea to sea, surface to surface missiles. But set up for sea, and they're rather good, and they've been updated over the years. So even though you can go back to I think the 1970s is when they're created, their electronics package is much improved if you look at over the versions of Harpoon. So these are probably relatively current models, maybe not the latest, but relatively current models, and 85 million Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. Supposedly, I don't know if it's in one of these, they've asked for some HIMARS, the high mobility. Just trying to see if they mention it here. No, they've asked for some HIMARS missile launching systems and ATACMS missiles. I'm just to see if we can in their request. That's like the drones. We're not talking about big drones like that for what's coming over. Okay, here we are. For their Taiwan's proposed 2023 defense budget includes 29 HIMARS systems and 84 ATACMS tactical missiles. This is the HIMARS system with regular missiles, not the ATACMS. ATACM is one missile per launcher. It drops the request for 40 M109A6 Paladin self-propelled howitzers. So they are looking we can see here. This is the missile package. You can see here. It's one missile. It's a big missile. It has, as they say here, 300 kilometers range. I don't know if it has multiple warheads on it once it gets there, but these are a big package. So instead of 6 of these, it's 1 of these on it. This would be very good to hit ships, to hit air bases in China, and similar. Yes, the harpoons are also air to surface. Yeah, I presume so, but I just don't specifically know of Beam Slam their employment in the U.S. under those conditions. Japan to boost spending on hypersonic tech and drone development. So I don't think if China had been, this is dated August 30th, so very recently, I don't think if China had been doing all of these very aggressive actions, again, Lockheed Martin here, Japan would be boosting its spending on these technologies. I think it's covered here. Again, this is a very good source, Indo-Pacific News, if you want to follow it on Twitter. Opinionated news, but very good sources, it seems, in covering this field here. We can see the various ranges and threats of ballistic missiles. Japan has changed its diplomatic status or its public concern over calling for what was their term? Basically no military actions in the Straits of Taiwan. Basically, don't invade, don't take military actions. China, or we're going to do something about it. And Japan, or some Japanese politicians, not the president or the prime minister, premier of Japan, but some of the elected officials in Japan have now openly called for Japan's intervention if Taiwan is directly attacked, whether that means invaded or not. And that is a new big change. Hello, Plastic Gangster. What's the ray gun that the guy just chatting had? And what just chatting is because we're not playing a game today, is a style of Twitch streaming. That's what they do when Slytherin does holds its tea time. It's called just chatting. So everybody wants HIMARS lately, or MLRS, the older, and probably better sys. Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. It's the ATACMS missile that they're the stumbling block for Ukraine. No, as the Japs can't have them, I expect China will go through the roof if we supply them to Taiwan. Japan has recently renounced their absolute defense policy, and the Germans are removing it from their constitution as well. Oh, you know it, but I didn't know you do it. Well, that's what we're doing today. We're not playing a game today. So I didn't want to label it as a game session here. Okay, so And yes, breaking China calls U.S. to cancel deal with Taiwan countermeasure. Now, to my understanding, the U.S. has not yet agreed to give them in their package here. Because notice this is retweeting the thing earlier. This is not the U.S. has not put in its package for the Harpoon or they put the Harpoon and the Sidewinder in their package, but they've not put the HIMARS or the ATACMS system. The MLRS system, I don't know, is good for Taiwan in that it is, and I don't know if it already has the logistics train set up for that particular tracked vehicle. So that's generally what it is. For the HIMARS is on trucks, so that might be better. And I think Taiwan realizes it doesn't want to do stationary anti-shipping or other strategic missiles. They want to keep them moving around so that it is harder for China to target them in a first strike kind of activity. Will the U.S. give them? Did you see the guy with the railgun? Well, you're talking about the. If you're talking about this is the anti-drone gun. I don't think it's a railgun. I think it's just a electronic beam weapon of a disruption sort, is what I believe this is. I don't know how much drone vision. I don't know. Someone can look that up to see what that is and find a picture. The sales company may be telling us. So I see that as that's their wishful thinking. The ATACMS is wishful thinking by Taiwan. I think they would, and not wishful thinking, oh, I wish we could afford them. No, I think they can pay them. I don't think they're going to give them to Ukraine either, because I don't think the US or other governments wants to see deep strikes into Russian territory with ATACMS missiles, because they're supplied by the US. And the likelihood of spiraling out of the theater, not maybe to nuclear war, but spiraling out of the theater attacks in response to that. So, no Hoi 3 right now, son. We're talking about Taiwan at the moment, and we had been talking about Ukraine earlier. So we'll be back to Hoi 3 next week. At least that's the plan. It's the ATACMS that is a stumbling block. The M2000 MLRS is armored and tracked and carries twice the number of missiles, or still I think it's just one ATACMS if you mount that on there. So now politicians will tell you wheeled vehicles are blah, 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 but ask any soldier if they would rather have wheels or tracks. The answer was always be tracked. Not in South Africa's case. They preferred wheeled because they were operating on such a grand scale of Southwest Africa and Angola for a lot of their operations during that war. They used some of their tanks, the Centurions that they had upgraded over the years, but they really liked the wheeled vehicles because of the long operational ranges. So yeah, I hear you. And the MLRS, I think, only carries one ATACMS. So if you're, and again, that 2023 defense budget for Taiwan that they're talking about stopped its request for more Paladin self-propelled howitzers, because the Paladin, yes, you can target ships that are near to your shore, but ship's not terribly effective. 155 millimeter round hitting that ship is going to be significant, but if you have a bunch of ships out there, they're going to do counter battery fire very rapidly and probably obliterate those howitzers pretty effectively. And if you're just going after landing craft as they come in on the beaches and fighting within Taiwan territories, yes, they're going to be effective, but not so much. So I'll ask some. Oh, Yeah, maybe next week. Yeah, sorry about that. But if you have other questions to ask, we can deal with that. Here, it would still not be legal in the Netherlands. You're dreaming. Okay, I don't know. Yeah. What's the ray gun? Well, it's an anti-drone gun. You can look at. I don't know. You can type in drones vision here, which is printed on the side of this gun. I guess I think it's printed there, and not just superimposed on the graphics. So that may tell you. I don't know what model or this thing. I don't think the Ukraine will get ATACMS because that would give them the ability. Yeah, deep. Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to give them that. They don't want to change the equation there. The same reason they probably won't give them to Taiwan. No reason the Japanese can't have them. Yeah. Okay. Can mount 2 ATACMS. Very good. Plastic Gangster. Plastic Gangster is very well informed on some of these topics. So yes. Yeah. There's no reason Japan can't have them. But down here is another. This account posts some really good graphics. No, he's not making most of them. Sometimes he credits them. The Indo-Pacific News. Yes, I know I saw it here earlier. Here, okay. Here we go with the various missile ranges here. 120, 120. Now, they do have some of the islands right along the coast. Here with Yunfeng. So you can build a missile. Building a missile for a nation like Taiwan is not hard to do. They have the industrial capabilities. It's making the missile an effective combat weapon. It becomes difficult. So I don't know. And we can look at China. China traditionally, and I don't know how far they can put a missile out to the U.S., but traditionally they've had a difficulty of hitting the U.S. from their mainland, and I don't know about China's submarines. I do currently, if they're supposedly all operational, but Taiwan has 4 diesel electric submarines that are fairly old. 2 of them are Dutch built, and 2 of them are US built. So they're operating 2 submarines, which I think submarines are very good for Taiwan's defensive capabilities if they can be stealthy enough. So I think it would be good for Taiwan and for the general world here, for Taiwan to have significant mainland striking capability, something like the ATACMS. We can see here also, like, yeah, they're planning. This is the mock-up in China, put on some sort of China States, whatever. We can see the watermark here of this building here, which is the capital of Taiwan, the actual Capitol building. So yeah, I mean, it's not obviously an exact, but it's for military training purposes. Yeah, they're planning it. They're doing exercises. So anyone who thinks that this is just some sort of bluff or whatever, and here, this is another. Recently, a UN agency posted a map that included this as part of China. The Vietnamese government complained, and the map was removed from the website, and an updated one with this part, because it was in a little sort of, box down here in the corner, the way it was done, claims down in the South China Sea removed. So this is very concerning to all of these nations. They want to, the first island chain is sort of its stopping Chinese expansion here, shall we say, that if they get Taiwan, this puts all of this into the second island chain and worries. So Japan, which owns islands up to here, right to there, is very worried, and China is claiming some of these islands, is putting very worried on the international, give you guys a better look at it, situation here. And so if I were the US, if the decision is made to give them something like the ATACMS missile, I would make sure it's a very small window between when I publicly announce that they're going to get them and sending them. Meaning I would basically have all of the missiles sitting in a warehouse in the US ready for air shipment to Taiwan, announced, and within 24 hours have them in Taiwan. I do not think Taiwan is likely to, let me just update to see if they've posted anything new here. Their pinned tweet. Okay, 1 hour ago, Russian Pacific Fleet and Chinese Navy ships continue. We were talking about this Vostok 2022 earlier when we were talking about Ukraine. Naval drills in the Sea of Japan. Russia and Chinese ships, including PLAN, that's People's Liberation Army Navy, Type 055 destroyer 101 Nanjing carried out live artillery firing in the Sea of Japan. Sea of Japan doesn't necessarily mean it's in territorial waters. We'll get rid of the sound on that. Territorial waters of Japan is just the region, very well maybe when what is considered. That looks very much like a Soviet ship to me. And I didn't mean Soviet because it's that style, but maybe that's that's a bit more modern. Okay. So I don't know whose ships these are that are shooting. It's obviously a Russian officer. Yeah, okay. So, and we can see that this naval exercise is going on. Indonesia getting gray zoned by China. This is 2 hours ago. China is subjecting Indonesia to maritime gray zone tactics in North Natuna Sea. So they're now pushing there as well. U.S.-China shadow war descends on Taiwan. China, U.S. to go, yeah. So I really think, looking at the map, looking at current statements, Vietnam has fought a war with China, around 1980 or so? Maybe a little earlier than that. It was sort of post or related to Vietnam's invasion of Cambodia to get rid of Pol Pot. China, it has or had a very close relationship with Pol Pot, and actually is continuing a close relationship with Cambodia. And so, and Japan, or not Japan, sorry, Vietnam kicked China's ass in that border war pretty hard. Okay, I'm on their website now. It's actually a projectile firing device. Okay, and it's made in Taiwan. What it does, oh yeah, it's not a projectile device. Yeah, okay, I gotta read this better. What it does is scramble all radio signals. That's what I thought. And data input or output to the target drone. Apparently it blocks the drone transmitting video. GPS blocks drones. Okay, good. Yeah, they've always been a super subtle, haven't they? Yeah. There's no bluff in the Chinese position. No, there isn't. They absolutely intend to be reunited with the mainland. They will invade the minute. Yes, that's what I said earlier, I think, before you got here. As soon as they think they can do it successfully, as well, as soon as they can physically do it successfully, as well as not have too bad of an international reaction to the invasion. When those two things are hit. And I will say this, Ukraine war and the willingness of Europe to suffer the pain of Gazprom, which they've now announced shut down because of a leak, shut down Nord Stream 1 pipeline entirely, my understanding is, entirely shut down now. Um, because of the sanctions against Russia, the world is seeing, China is seeing the world is ready to put that kind of level of sanctions on China. And China, I don't think, can afford it. I think the reaction to Taiwan has severely limited or changed China's thinking towards the world reaction to it. What's happened with Ukraine, I really do. China, and I could pull up. I'm not going to try to, unless there's one right here in this collection of maps. No, I have one. I'm not. Well, this works here. China imports a lot of oil from here. It comes through the Straits of Malaysia. China has invested a lot in African resources. Not that it entirely needs those resources. Part of it is just an economic control, because some of the resources are things that they produce. China is in conflict with India right now. I think the Philippines, under their new president, is pursuing a more pro-U.S. policy. Marcos is back in charge of the Philippines. Marcos' son, but Marcos is back in charge of the Philippines, won the election there. They got rid of Duarte because he was a crazy man, and they elected the dictator's son. How interesting. So they figured the dictator was better than the crazy man. Okay. So, but the Philippines are, I think, quietly pursuing a pro-U.S. anti-China policy. South Korea was the only major nation in that sort of immediate zone that wasn't coming out and showing alarm for China's actions over Taiwan, which actually sort of surprised me. Where Japan very much was, Vietnam very much was. Vietnam now thinks its bestest friend nation ever possibly could have is the United States. So, and the only thing that's really holding back that relationship is the U.S. is a bit concerned that the communist government that's still in charge in Vietnam, although it is allowing a certain amount of free enterprise or state enterprise or whatever you want, maybe not quite free enterprise, but a certain amount of state capitalism or whatever going on. And it's somewhat not terribly great diplomatic or no human rights stuff is keeping the U.S. from embracing it closer. But yeah, Vietnam really thinks America's just the greatest right now. And that's not just in the South; that's also in the North. Bomb them for a few years and they end up loving you. So yeah, and so China is really worried about its oil supply from the Middle East, somewhat worried about its supply in Africa. But if its markets, which are the rest of the world for its manufactured goods, goes away, that will collapse the Chinese economy. Not this, what are they calling it, tofu, buildings that are falling down, buildings that weren't built to code. They do have building codes in China. It's just you can bribe the building inspectors and have them go away cheaper than putting in good things. What is plastic? The energy crisis of our making. Absolutely. As I was saying, I feel sorry for the individual. I don't feel sorry for the peoples of Europe for going to freeze this. When grandma freezes, yeah, I'm not happy about that. But yeah, it's your nation. You decided to freeze grandma instead of having nuclear power plants or setting up for America natural gas. We have already reduced Russian oil imports to the EU and UK. Well, they're supposedly shutting it down, Nord Stream 1 at least. And so I don't know if other imports are coming in through other means. So yeah, no, Europe is effed up. But since Europe is continuing to back it, I think this is telling China, or demonstrating to China the willingness of the world to, the U.S. we found out, I don't know about Europe, but the US has imported the majority of its medicines from China, which shocks me because of the lack of quality control. And I mean from mainland China, not Taiwan. So that production had shifted to China. Well, my understanding, there's some moves to shift some of that medicine production back to the U.S., and I hope they do so quickly. But I don't think, and I think they were relying upon all of that kind of thing to keep the U.S. from putting on sanctions, embargoes, whatnot on China over a Taiwan invasion. And I think the Chinese have had to reevaluate in light of the military capacity of Russia that maybe their actual invasion capacity isn't quite as effective as it might have been, so it might not be a 4-day war of an invasion, so that this would collapse the Chinese economy. Does that mean that the Communist Party goes away? Not necessarily, but it might. Or it might mean that there's a actual Chinese Communist civil war within it. China is rearming at a rate not seen. Yes, they're I don't know if rearming, they're just arming up, and a lot of it was with new equipment, so it's not so much operational. Now I think they have 2 operational carriers, Plastic Gangster, or at least 2 big ones. But they don't really have an aircraft for it if you look into it. But they have their old aircraft, but that they because it's 2 new big ones, and they have their old aircraft for whatever. Because I guess you're right, and then it's 3 for whatever. They're sort of V-stall aircraft, but they have yet to be able to build a good aircraft that can use the sort of catapult type system. So they've yet to come up with a good aircraft put on it. And so, well, I don't think the oil is a critical thing for the carriers, because for something like the Navy, China can now during peacetime stockpile a fuel oil for ship reserves. But remember, the carriers, yes, they need oil for the airplanes, gasoline for the airplanes, but their carriers, I believe, are nuclear powered. I could be wrong on that. Now, all their destroyers and other small ships, they're all oil. They can stockpile enough operational fuels for years to come. It's funding the rest of their economy that's based on needing the oil or the gasoline or whatever. That's the real problem. It's not funding the ships, the oil for the ships, if they prepare for it. So yeah, China only has, my understanding is two big carriers, super carriers or whatever. Britain has 2. I think I don't know if you consider the French one a super carrier. Not really, probably. The U.S. is the only nation that has more than 2 super carriers, and we can put, I think, 5 at any one time in operation, at least the current operational tempo. But so I'm worried about this, what's going on, and I think it's something important to take a look at. I guess that's all the real news and whatnot here for Taiwan, the Taiwan crisis, if you will. And I wonder what the countermeasures China's going to do to the U.S. I don't know what that means. And when nations say things like this, it's a bad thing to do. A bad thing to do. You need to say, if X, then Y. If you sell these weapons, we will do this other thing. You have to spell it out. Don't just say warns of countermeasures. What, somebody's going to write a scathing editorial in in a CCP newspaper or one published in the New York Times? Or are they going to, arrest 25 Americans in high-profile Americans in China and charge them with spying? What are they going to do? I don't think they're going to. It isn't like, oh, if you sell them the weapons, we'll nuke California. I don't think it's that kind of thing, but it will be a response, and they need to spell it out so that if you want to modify their behavior, and of course it needs to be something that your opposition, and this is similar for the U.S. needs to do these things too. It's something that they expect. Look, earthquake trending in California. Yay, we like earthquakes. So yeah, something that you think they're going to carry out in actuality. And then that may get your your opponent or whatever, to change his behavior. But beyond that, I don't think it's going to actually have an effect or work. I think all militaries everywhere are rapidly reevaluating everything in light of Ukraine. Yes, I personally feel the motivation is a huge issue in the poor Russian performance. That and the fact that the maintaining such large militaries on a shoestring budget, something gets lost. We support our troops in the West with whatever they need, no matter what. As we have seen in the super expensive training professionals, need to be conserved. In Russia, the doctrine of soldier is not valued. Yeah, like I was saying earlier before you showed up, I think in the I think it's going to, we've sort of compared Ukraine to the Winter War. I think there's going to be a post-Ukraine war, and some people are saying it's already going on, and I think to an extent it is. I think we're going to see something of a reformation, reform in the Russian military post-Ukraine. Not that it's going to become a Western style or level of training and whatnot army, but it is going, I think we're going to see a severe changing in the next 10 or 20 years. So I think the Western politicians, not so much the military, but the Western politicians that are going to breathe a sigh of relief and that we can continue to cut budgets because, hey, Russia's just a paper tiger, they're not dangerous, I think is going to be the wrong lesson that some of them are apparently having. So, yeah. So I think that's going to conclude here. I'll happily respond to any other comments or questions the best I can, but I think that is my evaluation of China and Taiwan and their conflict. So again, to everyone watching later, thank you so much for making it this far. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and tell me what you think about all this. We've seen recently, with a lot of us here, the GPU crisis of not being able to get them, as well as a car crisis that has been going on in America. There are a lot of cars and trucks that are just sitting somewhere that can't be sold because they do not have the computer chips that are necessary to put into them. So used car prices in America have gone up because you can't buy a new one, so you buy a used car if you need something. So if we were to see a conflict with Taiwan, also another thing, sorry, one of the new high-level chips that Taiwan makes, TSMC makes, Taiwan Semiconductor, whatever, manufacturing, have been told in the last 48 hours or so, have been told by the U.S. government that they cannot transfer any of those chips to mainland China or Russia, and they're obeying the U.S. orders or requests on this, and China has also made another public statement on it that this is not a good thing. So, and these are not just standard computer chips. These are stuff that are used for AI operations. So advanced AI chips will no longer be able to be some of the stuff that's coming out, be able to be transferred to China. Not that China won't be able to somehow get their hands on some of them, but you can no longer ship them over to China. And Nvidia and some of the other stocks went down again very recently, went down significantly because of this, because there had been massive orders to China for these chips and whatnot. So that is an action. What a plastic. The new carriers they have are effective enough, capital ships, but carrier ops are most difficult. Yeah, the U.S. has been doing it. Yeah, they're not quite on this. Oh well, no, these were orders to uh, to Taiwan. I don't know if Indo-Pacific News here covered it. These were not a request. These were orders. Yeah, here's the politician talking about these. I don't know if they covered it or if I read it somewhere else. No, these were specific orders. These weren't requests because of still certain U.S. technologies are involved. These were a hard order on them. And basically kind of orders that I'm just seeing if I see it here. I don't think so. No, it's going too far back. It's more recent. These are orders that Taiwan is not allowed to break, and these companies, it's going to be serious problem if they do. It's really a thing that will encourage NVIDIA and companies of all sorts to get out of China and build their stuff elsewhere. Yes, well, the U.S. has already given or set aside a large sum of money to set up chip fabrications here in the United States. I know one of the other major chip fabrication, Intel's chip fabrication, one of their major, and they're doubling the plant currently as we speak. Size is in Israel. That's one of their major chip functionings outside of Taiwan. So yeah, no, and like I said, these were specific State Department orders to these companies, and basically to a point is that if you don't obey these orders, you're not going to be able to sell your chips in America. So it comes down to, hey, yeah, we have a big customer of China or a super big customer of America who's also supplying our military needs. Who are we going to obey? You obey the U.S. So yeah. And so yeah, they've already been moving a lot of manufacturing out of China. If it's super cheap manufacturing, actually, there had been a lot of socks and underwear and t-shirts had been being made in China for years. A lot of that has moved to Bangladesh. Other slightly more high-tech stuff has been going to India and to Vietnam for about the last 10 years. And it's now accelerating out to Vietnam and India. If I was starting this sort of business at the moment, I would avoid production or supply chains that involve China simply because yes, absolutely, and everybody is taking advantage of it or taking of the situation and doing that kind of thing. And it is not just Trump or even what an American president is looking at. If there is an invasion of Taiwan, that's going to disrupt everything and whatnot. Okay, like I was starting to wrap this up, I want to thank you all for watching. See you next time. Okay, everybody. Do we want to do some Hearts of Iron 3 now? Continue that series, or we want to call it a day? I don't know. I think I'm up for a little bit of Hearts of Iron 3. I guess we will, let's see, we'll put this screen up here. You guys see that we're switching games. I'm probably not going to change the title for the screen. I'll just make a couple episodes that'll go up. Now, unfortunately, as you're talking about starting a business at the moment, a lot of these chip manufacturers, major manufacturers, are so tied in with patents, you're really not going to start a business. You're just going to shift your current production locations. We screwed up massively with China. We made this bugbear. Yeah, when I was trying to Mr. Ice Guy back around the millennium, we would never have invested billions and billions. We poured into China, into Russia, and eventually the Soviet Union collapsed. We should have stuck to the same doctrine. Okay, well, yes, Clinton, and now I don't, because the Bush administration continued it, but there is the okay. Our schools, for the longest time, are entirely, and I don't mean just recently in the woke generation, but I mean since maybe since World War II, are in infested with Marxism. Okay, I remember years ago starting to read a book about the 18th century, sort of a small, thin book. I still got it somewhere around here, but it's like the history of the 18th century or something like that. And I rage quitted a few chapters into it because it was a Marxist look at it. Now, I'm not saying communist. Please understand, I'm saying Marxist. In that they explain everything through the lens of economics. Why does somebody invade somebody else? Because of economics. Everything, and I'm not even talking capitalists here. They're Marxist. They believe that people are going to make choices primarily on economics. That's what I mean by being a Marxist. Whether they're buying choices or whether they're voting choices or activity choices, it's going to be based on economics. I don't believe economics is the prime motivating factor for human beings or state governments, national governments, whatever you want to call them. I sort of have to say that because are we talking about an American state here, or we're talking about, a country's government? I don't believe economics is the primary motivating factors. So, but people do. And so they believe that if we could make a economically interdependent world, we couldn't have any wars because China can't invade Taiwan because that would collapse Chinese economy. Does China care about the Chinese economy, or does it care about getting Taiwan back? So, and I would say not that it does care about its economy, but it cares mostly about getting Taiwan back. And so, the U.S. can't invade some Middle Eastern country because that'll disrupt oil supplies because of economics, blah, 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 blah. So this has been the infiltration or the dominance of Marxism in our economic system. And it's pretty bad. I think we can see a lot of. I would argue that religion is part of culture. So that's why I'm a culturalist, because religion has a cultural aspect to it. And that's how I would say that these things are. And so I think we see, whether it's the war on terror or the terror war or whatever, I see a lot of motivations are based on religious belief and not on economic mobility. I think we can look at the entire Iranian regime since its Islamic revolution as being counter to its economic benefit of Iran. I think we can see that in China. So Clinton administration and the Bush administration, again, I'm not trying to be overly partisan here, they believe that if they could intertwine China to the global economic system instead of isolate it from it, that it would make quote unquote rational decisions based upon that. And so that they would no longer be a threat. They would just be another big power sitting there and abusing their own people. And they also believe that eventually the people would, through economic benefit, would no longer need to be oppressed. Years ago, 70% of China outreach were knee deep in the paddy fields. They worked in it. Now they work in chip factories, make DVD players. Yes, there's so much. I agree completely. There's an economic prerogative for Taiwan that is where the economic for Taiwan pretty much is politics and nationalism. For the Chinese, it is about power and respect, face or saving face. You're absolutely, as opposed to economics. Besides, it doesn't matter what China wants. The people will want to do what makes them wealthier and more comfortable, but dictators don't see it that way. Emperor Xi will not suffer from economic hardships, but will bask in the flow of a hero if he returns. Yes. Well, China, mainland China, whatever you want to call it, is a very weird place because of their cultural revolution. The mainland Chinese people see money. They're learning the mistake of that, but they see money as security. And we're seeing with some of the lockdowns I saw, again, within the last 48 hours, they announced lockdowns in some part of China again, and there was literally a riot in, people standing on top of, I don't know, what do you, not, sort of where you normally put the fruit or whatever, sort of raised areas in the supermarket. I don't want to say tables, but installations, not on the shelving unit, but they're standing on top and trying to grab up food. Literally a riot to grab food. So no matter how much money you had, money can't get you food if it's not available. And a poor person that has a bag full of food that'll last a week isn't going to sell it for $1 million if he knows he's going to starve instead. $1 million is useless to a dead person. So no, I'm not saying the rich are going to be hugely affected by this lockdown, meaning they're going to starve or something, but just because you could pay 10 times the price of it normally was, doesn't mean the poor person who happened to get there before you and got the food is going to give up their food. Yeah, Ragar, we had a really good discussion. Would have wished you were here for it. You can watch it later. I will be posting two episodes, as it were, of my talk on Ukraine. I know the title no longer really matches what we're going to do, but I have to change it in 4 places to change it, and that takes a while, and I'm not feeling up to that. So so get back. Plastic Gangster says, I completely agree Where the economic okay, yeah, okay. Oh, we reread that. All right. Well, you're right. But those economics imperatives only work when the people are in charge. Well, okay. Now the Democrats, when Trump was getting elected, they thought economic imperatives are what's important to the American people. Well, they found out that they were bitter cleaners to gods and guns and Bibles and whatnot. I think that most Americans value something over economics. I may be wrong about that. I don't think it's the economic priorities that are going to drive the American voter. I think it's an element, and I think it's an important element. And especially if the American people see that the Democrats and Republicans are basically the same thing. Oh, well, which is going to get my job better? Then they're going to vote economics. But now that we're seeing a real split, because I'll tell you, I've been involved in American politics, there are many, many right-to-life people, most of them Republicans basically, right-to-life people, anti-abortion people, that don't care about economics. They will vote on the abortion issue. So if one person was going to, in some of these states, not maybe everywhere in America, but these hardliner types, will be, well, I'm going to burn down every single factory in this state. We're going to safely. We're going to have the fire department come out and burn down every single factory in this state. So just about everybody's going to, because that supplies jobs to everything else. So we're going to have basically no economic goodness. You're going to become peasants in the field, but I'm going to ban all abortion. They'll vote for that person. Okay. And you know what? If it was a choice between somebody who's going to ban my guns and somebody who's going to allow me to have my guns, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to allow me to have my guns, because my single strongest issue is the guns. Now, if both parties were the same on guns, then I would look at things like economics and other cultural issues. But I'm a hardliner on guns, as most of you know. So, yeah. Now, obviously, it's not that extreme. And, that somebody's actively going to try to destroy the economy versus not. Well, wait a minute, Biden, but never mind. So, if we are looking at it in that way, when there's huge choices between policymakers, I think economics becomes secondary. At least that's my opinion. Like I say, the current Western educational establishment disagrees with me, so who am I? But that is my opinion on things. I'm going to go grab another Coke, and I'll be right back before we get started here. So hang loose for just a moment. Oh, Solly Manga from Afghanistan, I believe that is. AFG. Sorry if that's something else. How you doing over on Facebook? We had been talking about Ukraine and Taiwan. If you want to go back to the earlier part of the stream, we're going to be playing some Hearts of Iron 3 right now. Yeah, I hear you about economic hardship, but that's what I'm saying about Iran. You can look at Iran and the cultural or the Islamic Revolution in Iran. You can look at the Russian Civil War and how much, for many people, God and the church played, particularly on the white side, with a lot of people. You know, and starvation is better. I'm not talking about economic, because we can look at America during the Great Depression. The Silver Legion was much larger than the German American Bund that everybody focuses on and had that one Washington Square, not Washington Square, the Madison Square Gardens, which is just a big arena kind of thing, indoor arena in New York City, in which they had big Washington poster there that the Nazis were. The German American Bund was just a minor blip. It was very few people outside of the German American community were actively involved in it, where the Silver Legion was a much bigger thing. But the Silver Legion couldn't even get a city councilman elected anywhere. They never held any sort of it wasn't even like 1% of the population or something was really pro the Silver Legion. And similarly with the communism and socialism was not popular in America during the Great Depression for the similar sorts of reasons. And people were in the soup kitchens and whatnot. Will you own Will be happy? I'm not. I don't get all of that. Is that something Dutch there, Arno, on Twitter? I don't know if you're still around. Great Depression was engineered. Okay. Oh, you will own nothing and be happy. Sorry. I didn't quite get that. Hello, Thor Thunder God 69. You will own nothing and be happy. Well, yeah, it was engineered like all other boom bust. Well, it was an engineered attempt not to be a boom and bust cycle that extended it longer, for sure. Russia's using 25% of their power just like the U.S. did in the Vietnam War. Hello, Hydro Drift. Well, yeah, but they've had very, very high casualty levels, which will be an interesting thing. Yes, I didn't get that. I didn't quite read that right at first. There, I agree. It would seem like the last few years, Westerners have adopted causes. Yeah, well, they're using in the West currently the global warming cause or climate emergency. You know how much the climate is an emergency right now, people? You know how bad global warming is? I think we're almost done with hurricane season for the year. And I think it was 1941, we've had the first year without a named hurricane. Out here in the Atlantic. That's how terrible global warming is. We don't have any hurricanes. Oh my God, people aren't dying in hurricanes because global warming is so terrible. Climate emergency, no hurricanes. No hurricane. Climate emergency, climate emergency. There's so much ice around Antarctica. Huge sheet of ice around Antarctica. We can't get to Antarctica. Emergency, emergency. We can't get our ship to Antarctica. Emergency, emergency. Global warming. There's huge. The ice sheet around, not just on top of Antarctica, but the ice sheet around Antarctica is expanding out. Huge. Global warming emergency. Global warming emergency. Too much ice. Too much ice. What? I don't know of a single serious bad effect so far that we can tag to global warming. We're having a drought here in California on the West Coast, but that's a local situation that periodically happens. And we know throughout history that it's the La Nina and El Nino, whatever kind of effect that it is, and I don't have enough knowledge here to describe it to you, but it's here. Now, my dad, who's over here, actually sort of up here in Arizona, has been in monsoons. So they're having monsoons because their weather comes up from the Gulf of Mexico, where we're over on the other side of these mountains here, that comes from the Pacific, and so it's the effects off here. And so, like I can say that there is a retreat of the northern ice cap, absolutely. And they're finding Viking settlements that have been under the ice or under the snow since the Vikings were there, but are now coming back. So now we're just going back to the Middle Age warm period, people. That's all we're doing right now. And there's more ice than they know what to do with. There really is a problem down in Antarctica. You can't get to Antarctica unless you're flying in anymore. You used to be able to take a ship there and see coastline, see rocky coastline. Now it's all covered, and I have I'm not going to dig it up right now, but I have the satellite image of all that ice, that just huge ice sheets around Antarctica. So maybe we're seeing a shift of ice. So we're not seeing any, because all this ice that was melting up here, we're going to have sea rise. Well, it's just being absorbed down in the big iceberg or ice sheet in the South Atlantic, or the Antarctic Ocean, or whatever the hell it's called, down around Antarctica. So yeah, it's and so they're using things like global warming as a need to limit population size, need to limit energy use, and I said here, yeah, let's kick some ice, Mr. Freeze, right? Is that the old Arnold version of Mr. Freeze? Sorry, I don't know the Marvel stuff more than a little bit. So yeah, name me, a sea level rise. Name me a truly we can tag to global warming situation. That's, yes, from Batman and Robin, right? Yeah. See, I know a bit. I'm just sort of I'm a normie when it comes to that kind of stuff. Superheroes, I'm sort of a normie at. I'm good with the original Star Wars, the original Star Trek stuff, and but the not this latest new crap, but the old good stuff I'm fairly good with. So yeah, I don't think economics is a significant weight on the scales for the motivation of human beings. I do believe so. It is a significant one. It is an important one. And sometimes it may be the primary motivating factor, especially like I was saying, when most people in America didn't see too big a difference between Democrat and Republican in their daily lives, whether they had a job or whatever, And so if they were like a union worker, you voted Democrat because that was going to sort of help you out economically. But no one was going to ban them or put them in a, lock them in their homes or for quarantines or whatever. They didn't see a big difference. between policies. So yeah, economics is sort of, well, who, whether it's like a union interest or, hey, if you're big business interest, you voted Republican or whatever like that. And both were more or less anti-communist back in the day. Not the Democrats anymore. They're pro-communist, but I don't care about big shit either. Batman is all kind of okay. Yeah. Well, I know some people are big into it, and I'm not anti it. It just I don't know it well. So yeah, the motivating of governments, motivating of people, is a thing that I'm interested in. Okay, so here's a German unit that's been given to them from Italy, I guess here. They're very different things. One of them deals with reality, and the other is a fantasy desire that has no basis in reality. Okay, well let's sort of make an episode or two here. We can still talk about other things as we go. And the reason because I'm streaming on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter now, I'd have to either at least one case, I have to restart the stream, or I would have to the other three cases go in and change everything on each of the stream, and I'm going to do all that. So, but we will make some episodes, and I will be posting them for people to watch later. Merchant crap, free markets, but boomer is going to boom. Well, I think I'm disagreeing with you there. I'm almost a boomer, not quite, by at least some of the definitions. Yeah. Welcome, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and we're going to continue with our Hearts of Iron 3 playthrough, and we're playing through as the United States. Now, I don't know if the begin Operation Torch. No, we're not ready for that. Okay, so we're going to ignore those. Now, just to update you on the situation, because I think primarily Britain was not making enough. They are starting to make some convoys and heavy submarine losses to submarines. They could not supply North Africa enough. They very well may have been running supply through the Mediterranean. I'm not sure. So we are seeing a general British collapse in the Mediterranean, but we're now seeing a bit of a resurgence in the East Africa area. Okay, thanks, Plastic Gangsters. Thanks for hanging out with me. Really do appreciate it. Great input here. Okay, so we're doing that, and like I've said, the U.S. I am not prepared for this war as I should have been. We are getting more and more industry online, as you can see here. I guess no more is really scheduled right now. Just that and that. Okay, so and right now we are sort of in an emergency situation. Do I invest more in industry? And we need more industry, but and we definitely do need more in industry. Well, we've had a very big hit to destroyers, and so many of our fleets are running with little or no destroyers, which means they're significantly weaker, and they take a long time to build, so I don't really want to stop production on these. The CVE will help. Okay, that will move to the bottom. We won't cancel that. We need some more divisions to help out in places like sub-Saharan Africa. We are giving Lend-Lease of 42 to Britain, so that is helping them. We can look here under intelligence. Okay, here, United Kingdom, and we can see them. Well, currently they're only producing one strain of Envoy, at least according to our intelligence. Well, thought they were producing 2 or 3 strains right now. I don't know what we can do about that. So, but we need to do that. We are still facing off with the Japanese. These motor torpedo boats will be a quick build once we get them into production, or through here. So yeah, we need to do a lot of this stuff. I know this isn't maybe the best position we should be in, but that's where we are now. I think combat technologies are what we should be looking at here. We are in 43. I know that's fairly late to be in such a bad spot. And those that haven't watched everything, this is the first time I've played as America. I thought we were going to get more boosts to America's industry through events than we did. I really thought we were. So we have, okay, we've got a lot of carrier air groups here. We needed those, and we needed the flying boat and bomber squadrons. All right. So let's deploy some of these here. What I want to do is we're going to stick let's stick this USMC unit there and attach to it a bomber wing. We'll just put in a generic commander, naval bomber. Now, okay, they have 12 units there. Well, let's look at the naval map. Trying to invade down into here as well. Well, we're still seeing convoys sunk, and I think these are British, but I'm not sure, around this area. So let's come back to standard. No, wait, no, I wanted you to fly over there. So, okay, we'll get those over to there. Organize up. Try to reduce the U-boat menace. And I'd like to mix my flying boats and attack aircraft. Okay, so we have. Nope, not there anymore. Did they come over to here? Nope, there may be. Let's see. Could be. Nope. They're full up. Now, so that means we have. I think we're doing okay on Pacific for carrier operations. So let's deploy you here. Ticonderoga and that. And here. Okay, so now we have carrier air groups for them. Part of what I wanted to do is, after having my carrier air groups destroyed earlier on and putting my aircraft carriers out of operation, I didn't want that to continue, so I built a lot for replacements. Now, we've been seeing a very good operations in and around the Philippines with our motor torpedo boats, so we're going to continue some of that. Very effective. Okay, that'll get them. We'll do a second. so we have that. Tactical bombers, we'll leave those in there. Submarines, okay. Well, we've been taking some losses in there. I don't know how much we're gonna. Well, we'll see what we can do. Let's put them out here into the Atlantic, because we have a fair amount in the Pacific. We're going to let that continue, let these get organized up. Oh, that's probably what we're going to do for deploying there. So, okay, let's let the clock go and see if we can continue our battle and successfully get ashore here. Looks like we might be able to do it. Oh, okay, pause. We're now a continental military power. Good. Infantry radio communications advance. Electronic. 44 maybe. And aviation navigation rate. That other one there. Now we have a few more. Let's come over to look and see what we should be doing here. Ah! Yes, please. I didn't even know about these because I'm not used to playing America. Okay, the M1 Garand. I guess we should have had that much earlier. And the P-51 Mustang. And we'll take those two technologies and move them to the top because I want them done as fast as possible. These are some new stuff here for the game. Okay, did not know. Okay, Beam Slam, thank you for hanging out with me. I do appreciate it. You have a good evening, I believe it is over there for you. Or a good day or whatever, but yeah. And I also want to take a look at what we're doing over here because we're running two invasions at once here. Get ashore. Okay, it looks like we were about ready. They actually, I think, snuck in, if I remember correctly, a force past our ships. Recon unit coordination. Interrupting the flow of the show. Okay, yeah, we'll let that continue to 43. Okay, yes. So we've taken out that. They're down to this one group of Japanese Marines. I think we'll take that. Unlike the other episode here where I badly sent in one force unescorted, they got slaughtered. We've got carriers, battleships, and the invasion force. So that is well protected and operating. Now here, about ready to get rid of one division. Okay, okay, we got that. Now if we can just keep going and get this last one down here. Soviets are not our current enemies, at least. Don't think so. Ah, the British look like they're reinforcing Gibraltar. What it looks like they're doing. Or these guys, Mexico is invading or whatever. Not smart. And come on, go for like limited. Because right now we're still at peace with Vichy France, so we just have this limited amount of forces here. they have to send in naval forces or use naval landings. Oh, no, they're landing over here. Oh, God. Well, this is a really aggressive invasion policies here. Looks like I don't know for sure. Okay, these are actually Mexico. Where these are Mexico in the service of Britain, it looks like. They've given some of the forces over. Money for fuel? No, we got plenty of fuel. Money for fuel? No, and it is more. Oh, metal. They want metal. Yes, you can have metal. You've got extra metal. You can have metal. Okay. We lost one of our last submarines out here in the Eastern Mediterranean. Battle of Cape Wrath. Wow. Okay. Up here, we took out 4 auxiliaries and a sub with our battleship group. We're going to move it back into port here because I want to get the Arkansas and the San Francisco cruisers a bit better in shape. Okay, we've won the Battle of Wake Island. Okay, you can go home. Yep, good. We've got our forces here ashore. So now we've retaken our islands, both of them, Wake and Midway, that we lost. We've sunk a lot of the Japanese fleet. Will we base you to here? Okay, Battle of Mindanao out here. These guys, like I say, have been doing really good service. Landing craft flotillas, which increases our range of operations and other good things. Let's continue that. There. No. Barrier group, CAG duty, resting, ground attack. Okay, there still should be doing ground attacks. Export of tungsten. Soviet Union. Yeah, let's do this. Hope they put another unit back into the front line, though it's not in very good shape. Naval strike tactics. Yeah, I just need a much bigger army here. Long until we get more army done. Okay, that's in July. We're just in March. Okay, April. We'll get 3 semi-motorized divisions. That'll be coming fairly soon. How are we doing down here? Okay, okay, our nation is the only one attacking here, so let's stop this. Yes. And we can see down here, they're already getting supply problems. I don't think it's from lack of ports or too many forces. I think it just Britain doesn't have the supply capabilities. Okay, Huff Duff advances. Go. Oh, we could do small warfare. Night combat training increased to 3. Yes, I know night combat, what it is. It's fighting at night, but that air units or thing that I well, that's probably ships. Is that ships? No. I like to learn where these are and what we're doing and I don't know. We're no longer researching it, whatever it was. Looks like we're going to get. Oh, here, that good one for 43. Yeah, France, you can have energy. And a dual purpose guns. That is one of these. Here we are. Yeah, stop that. Hello, crash landing. Well, this is Hearts of Iron 3. We sort of done with the talk, and I have got to change the stream name in many places to do that. Good to see you here. And we're playing World War II game. We had been doing. If you want to see the talking about Ukraine and Taiwan, you can go back to the earlier part of this VOD if you want. But good to have you here. Hopefully you hit that follow button. Okay, heavy anti-aircraft gun, small ship we can do. No, but we will. My machine also advanced. That's way too far into the future to keep researching. You can still, if you see something, you can ask a question about what we talked about. I went over earlier. I'll happily try to answer it. I'm live streaming to multiple places, including YouTube and Twitches. I know what you're on, but I gotta change too many things to update everything. Hello, Miko. Wilco, how you doing? Fan out and let me see. Yes, I certainly can. Okay, we would give them money for fuel. No. Okay, so we can see here Germany is actually being pushed back. They had Crimea, but they're holding up here in the north reasonably well, but actually actively being pushed back down here. Britain's merchant marine has collapsed basically, so they could not send supplies or enough supplies to keep these guys supplied. I know this partially because the American units that are down here are waiting for supplies because they need to be supplied through Britain, through British ports. So Italy is doing well there. We are holding out in the Philippines here. We see Britain pushing back the Japanese here in Burma. Some island battles here. We've recently taken Wake Island. I think that sort of covers, the idea of what's going on here. Give you a big picture. We're trying to get ashore here. Spain is actively part of the Axis, and we're trying to land here. Unfortunately, they did get one of these divisions back in here, but love to get ashore here. This may be a failed invasion. Britain keeps trying to expand out of Gibraltar and keeps getting hammered. Yep, World War going on for sure. Okay, looks in effect. Yes, you can have metal cube a little bit, sure. Resources we don't have have a current problem with. Industrial capacity and numbers of units and things like that. That's what we have a problem with. Okay, and right now these guys are patrol searching here. Let's see. We may have some. No. Okay. Okay, we got a bunch of motor torpedo boats that have. Can you come out to here? These guys have been doing very effectively here. What? Maybe to Guam, which they've never attacked, but we can get some motor torpedo boats operating out of Guam as well. How are our units here? Okay, are these guys operating? Yeah, they're naval striking. These guys are well enough organized up. Let's go to the air map here. There. You guys come over here to, see, looking at the naval map mode, we are losing some ships to German submarines, and Britain probably is some of these. Okay, well, we could maybe, let's have any, no, okay, these guys are. Okay, let's leave you at port so you continue to prepare. No, not controlling. Let's do passive. Let's see if that will work to get you out to sea. Because there's two ways to help Britain with its lack of transports. One, which we are already doing, is giving them some Lend-Lease aid of 43 currently. And the other thing, of course, is to reduce their losses. Battle commander recognition, that is down here. Yeah, this now. The lack of supplies is the problem. We're losing our organization because there's not enough supplies coming in. That's what I'm sort of hoping with some of these invasions. There'll be an American port and I can send in supplies that way. Heavy bomber prototypes advanced. Very nice. Okay. Not that these aren't useful to do, but maybe we should, well, let's do the things that we need to do. Okay. First. Don't think we might be able to make it ashore, but we're going to be super weak if we do. Okay. No, Canada, you don't need my tungsten. Mountain HQs have advanced. 42, yeah, because it's partially it's reducing the time between attacks. Once if we ever get to where we can operate, then we can. Hello, flexible 641. Well, what we can't do is with this game is send a convoy to an allied port. So I cannot have a convoy coming from America to this port to send supplies. So that is not something I can do. I did, and we do have some of our ships sitting here needing supplies from Saudi Arabia, which the U.S. is then sort of making up. But that's specifically why, well, they're even low on supplies there, so maybe I should. I don't know if I should get these guys out or not. Because maybe I should use these to get supplies into, or to get my troops into Saudi Arabia to keep that from collapsing. So yeah, I can't take over for British uses. I tried to invade straight into this territory. Unfortunately, Italy was too strong, so that would have been American conquest instead of British, and then I could have supplied it that way. So it's more of a it's hard coded in, yeah. And again, we'll take a look here. Okay, now they're building 2 lines of convoys to replace. That's Britain's strongest need, is those convoys. If they had convoys, they'd be okay, but they don't. Azores, okay. And Australia wants to build another submarine. Sure, go ahead. Um, oh. Pause. Bunch of stuff happening first of the month. Yes. Lots of stuff. But Battle of Mindanao Sea. CV, a major carrier, was just lost by Japan to my motor torpedo boats. Wow. That's probably a bit overpowered for a motor torpedo boat if this was entirely. Now, if it was an entirely unescorted carrier, like if Japan just like, oh, yeah, we were sending the carrier from point A to point B, and yeah, we're sending it through the Mindanao Sea. Yeah, they could take that. Maybe Japan just did that. So, yeah, okay, so they lost a. I don't know about the. So, it seems like a made up name. Japan has lost some other ships, I think, from earlier battles we had. Industrial zone has advanced. Yeah, we'll let that continue because we want to push forward with more IC efficiency. Okay, formation of the 7th Fleet. Yeah, I think this is just a on map HQ. Formation of the Air Transport Command ATC. Bearing men and material from one side of the globe to the next. Yes, we have that. We'll do that. Golden Lion, President, shall we form the headquarters? Yeah, for the infantry division, sure. Armored Raiders division, yeah, okay. Our industry asks for money. Why? I don't know, but okay. New battle commander has entered the field. All right, good. Heavy anti-tank upgrade to our support units. Very good. Wake Island is ours. We have to be taken Wake. Yes, I do know that. And we lose some descent and gain a teeny bit of national unity. Basically, one effectively moves us up 1%. Merchant Marine subsidies. Ooh, 21,000. Okay. I guess we have that, but that took a big dent in operation here. Okay, well. I guess we could say America's. Let's. Landing craft. These guys. What do we do about this? Okay, I think we're going to cancel this invasion here. So let's cancel the invasion order. Stop attacking. Stop attacking. Stop attacking. Yes, major defeat. I know. Okay, you guys. Back to here. We're going to add 2 more carriers with air groups. Yep, I would give that whoever what the whole yeah, Congressional Medal of Honor for a motor torpedo boat taking out a carrier. That's for sure. They get a Congressional Medal of Honor. We're going to send you out to the Pacific. Your long range sub. Honolulu. Go all the way around there. Now these guys here. These guys we're going to send. Oh, let's promote him up. Let's send him to England. Well, all the invasions of the European theater of operation happened without the United States Marines, as a soldier was telling me yesterday, I believe it was. So yeah, D-Day and all that. No United States Marines were involved. So yeah, and some of the major landings in the Pacific had like Army divisions as part of the initial landing force, not just later on. Okay, they're operating there. What you guys are going to do is you're going to come over here and you're going to patrol. So that way you're out here looking around for incoming thing. Battle of Manners Street. Battle of Manners Street refers to a riot involving American and New Zealand servicemen. I wish Strong Arm was here. Civilians and civilians outside the American Service Club in Manners Street, Wellington, New Zealand in 1943. The club was a social center open to all military personnel. In 1942 to 44, there were anywhere between 15,000 and 45,000 American servicemen stationed in New Zealand. Most camped around major urban centers of the country. Many of the American servicemen were coming from major American urban centers to New Zealand, which in 1943 was an isolated country with only 1.6 million inhabitants, or about the population of Detroit, Michigan, at least at the time. I think it may have gone down since then, but some of the servicemen from the American South objected to Maori soldiers using the club, and on the 3rd of April 1943 began stopping Maori soldiers from entering. Many New Zealander soldiers were in the area, both Caucasian and Maori, combined in opposition. The standoff escalated, and when the Americans took off their belts to attack those who wanted to let the Maoris in, the fight broke out, and at one point at least 1,000 men were involved in subsequent fracas, which was broken up by civil and military police. The major brawl lasted from 6 to 8 p.m., with some brawls lasting perhaps another 2 hours. Dozens of people were injured. News of the riot was censored at the time, hence much of the mythology about the event, including the claim that 2 Americans were killed. So I guess that is a myth that there was any Americans killed. Okay, so yep, Southern Americans were racist back then, and they objected, and it got out of hand. I didn't know. I knew about some of the battles in Australia. I didn't know about the. Okay, we get a light aircraft factory in Grand Rapids. In New Zealand, metals invading urban area. Yeah, invading. True enough. They were all tied up in the Pacific. Yes, and the many landings in the Pacific as well. Yes, very correct. I just noticed that it says are just chatting, not playing. Yeah, hi flexible. To change everything, I got to change it in 4 locations, and I don't really want to do that right now. Sorry, so it's a little long, and we are playing Boy 4, but we're also chatting too. So you want to chat, even about the earlier topics of Ukraine and Taiwan? I'm still open to that. Okay, so Marine for HQs and we're going to continue this just because the main reason we're continuing this here is it reduces time between attacks. Because if I ever get everything organized up and really able to go on the offensive, that will be really useful. Yes, you can have metal. So we're waiting for, okay, these guys, well, I don't know. Do we start trying to take back some Japanese islands? Like, what is this? Minami Torishima. This looks like a picture of uh, Iwo Jima there, but yep. Okay, well, if you want to, flexible, if you want to see it, just go back to the beginning of the VOD, and you can watch it either on, on Twitch or on my YouTube channel, wherever you want to. Go back to it, and you can see we did about an hour talk on Ukraine alone. So if you're interested in that, you can just go back to that part of it. Sorry for the inconvenience, but it's all there. And if you see something there you want to ask a question on, I'll be happy to try to answer it. I don't have like special information, but I am a historian and looking at it through a historical lens as well. Okay, so you guys are here. That's our invasion force. Now, you've got 2 landing craft here that we're going to add to the guys that are returning from over here. Oh no, you're probably, okay, you're going to, yeah, head back home. And that will be some more landing craft, so we can get another couple of divisions, hopefully, on board for landing there. And if whenever you watch, you have questions, I will likely do some talks in the future. You can always post your questions or comments or something. And I will address them in the future sometime if you want to. Okay, so motorized HQs, so we're going to leave that. Okay, electronic computing machines. Okay, allows proximity fuses research and gyro sites advance. Okay, so artillery. Proximity fuse, yes, we will do that immediately. Only do know we can do some of the other. That's too far. Continue that. Sites or wait on that. We can wait on that a bit. Proximity fuse. That was developed first during World War II, I believe, by the Americans. And I know the British worked on a radar, but I don't think they did any proximity fuse work. The Allies, particularly the Americans, but the Allies were very worried that the technology would get out because it was such a revolutionary thing to come up. And I guess you all know, I'm going to say anyways, just in case somebody knows, proximity fuse is a sensor put on a a projectile, a warhead, artillery round, could be an anti-aircraft artillery round, that when it gets near, I think it's generally the magnetic signature of a metal object, it gets close enough to it that it realizes there, and then it detonates. I believe that's how it works. As you can tell, I'm not an expert. But so where before, there's a whole lot of stuff going on that most of the major nations had time fuses, whether for indirect artillery, standard artillery guns, or like particularly anti-aircraft artillery, and particularly like in larger calibers, but they had timed fuses that could be set, immediately before shooting. Generally, they'd have a machine that you would sort of dip the nose of the round into, and would set it for however many seconds or parts of a second before it would detonate. So if you knew the range, like the altitude and range and whatnot of your target, and how long it was going to take to get there, you could blow it up, and it's generally better to do that either whether again for anti-aircraft or for even ground targets, because if you can blow up a round in the air, you're going to have much. And they were doing this in World War One, and they were doing this in the 18th century too. Realize that, because they would try to time their fuses for whether for a howitzer or a mortar. Those are the two types in the 18th century that used a hollow-filled cannons a little bit, but not really. Mostly howitzers and mortars. They would put a fuse timer on it to try to have it blow up in the air to spew fragments down onto the ground. So this goes all the way back well into the 18th century. So it's not, a timed fuse is not anything new. The effectiveness improved. And so that was very effective. But it takes, a lot of effort, and especially for an anti-aircraft one, it has to constantly being adjusted as the aircraft getting closer, and there's a lot of elements going into it. Well, they were, I don't know if panicked is the right term, but they were maybe paranoid level of concern over the proximity, that even that proximity fuses existed. They, to the best of my knowledge, they did not deploy any proximity fuses to the European theater of operations outside of Britain, because they were afraid that a dud round or something like that would get into, or I guess with a Battle of the Bulge type situation, overrunning of some American forces, the Germans would capture some and be able to put them into service. So they did bring them into Britain to shoot down things like the, V1 missiles that, are coming in. And they also put them on most American ships, destroyers, battleships, cruisers, whatnot, aircraft carriers. The smallest size they could put them on during that time, I know modern ones are smaller now, but that time was a 40 millimeter round, so 40 millimeters and up. And what they called them was a variable timed fuse. They knew what proximity fuses were, there, but they didn't even tell the soldiers. And I'm not sure I'm not sure on the drills, and I've looked into some things fairly deeply. I finally found, I spent months, not like 24/7, but I spent months looking around for information on, and I know this is an aside here, but just about all of the major nations needed oxygen for their pilots because they were flying at such high altitudes. Not air, but oxygen. So they needed oxygen. And I spent a long time, and I finally found one thing, and I didn't order the book, but there was a couple of stills, page captures I got from it. But trying to find out about the machines, at least that the Americans used, to separate, basically it's nitrogen, but separate the rest of the air from the oxygen, to have, in essence, an oxygen concentrator. And and they needed it everywhere because so many of the aircraft were flying high enough. Even subs had oxygen tanks on them, pure oxygen, to supplement the oxygen levels that they had. And so it took me a long time, and there is very, very little information out there on these units that, for the Army Air Corps, particularly. And they fairly highly trained soldiers that ran these things, because everywhere needed them. Whether you were, North Africa or Britain or coming in. So they had up in the, fairly forward, trailers at air bases that was creating, oxygen and then loading it in, because we see trucks, carrying bombs and fuel trucks out there refueling the aircraft. Well, they also had to refuel these, the oxygen containers on the aircraft. So they had them at the significant air bases. Not maybe every airbase had one, I'm not saying that, but they had to be fairly up near the front, and then, large cylinders, about 4 feet high, about 8 inches around is what the oxygen is stored in. And I saw one photo because I have just 2 or 3 photos in this thing of this thing. You know, one, empty cylinders or whatever it said, and a bunch of them stacked there. And then I presume I didn't see a sign. I presume the other ones were full, so that you would a truck would probably show up and load a bunch of these and take them to whatever the other regional airfields were. So trying to dig out information like that, at least online, was very difficult. There's very little written about how they maintained the oxygen um, for the air units in the field. And the Germans had to do this too. The British had to do all this because they were flying at altitudes too high for even just air. You had to have oxygen feeding in there. Now, there's a lot of stuff I found on about the systems on the aircraft, whether they're a constant flow system for oxygen or a varying flow system depending on need and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff on the aircraft, but there was very little logistic support. So these variable time fuses, I know this is where we started out, as sort of aside. I don't know whether they were still dipping that fuse into the timing device or not. I don't know the drill for it, but they call them a variable timed fuse because they did not even want the sailors on the ships like, hey, well, maybe if you're captured, you might spout out the words proximity fuse, and the enemies, Japanese in this case, would find out that they were using proximity fuses. So at least most of the gunners and operators did not know the anti-aircraft rounds that they were putting out were proximity fuses. They called them variable time fuses. I'm not saying nobody knew, but most of the gunners did not. That's how paranoid they were. There's not a likelihood that the Japanese are going to pick up a failed to detonate round from an anti-aircraft round from a ship fired out there, but it's possible that they could have. Ooh, we see a motor torpedo. Oh, that's just a motor torpedo. But I was wondering if there's an invasion coming for Guam, but it doesn't look like it. Nope. But I guess we don't need a leader. Let's put naval strike. You should be up here as air intercept. If you see any enemy air, you should also be up here as air intercept in case you see any air. Yes, you can have metal, or okay, we're going to let that continue. Okay, HMS Warspite is lost. So the British lost a major surface combatant. All of their stupid invasions. This problem, we've been seeing a bunch of invasions here, had been a problem of Britain for a long time until their finest hour came out, and then their overreaction to it. But we're now seeing maybe it doesn't cover Spain. I don't know. And we can see here we're going to retreat because we don't have any organization, and somehow the Italians are maintaining supply and we are not, and I don't know why that is happening. Well, the encryption machine lost it for a moment. Okay, stop that. Keep them from reading our mail, as it were. Let's. Most of these are 33 technology, or 43 technology, sorry, which are what we should be doing, but I think we're going to. No, I think we'll start coming over here and doing some of these. Where's destroyer crew? We want to do destroyer crew. They're already pushing us back here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to retreat back here. We're going to retreat back to here. Once we get back to here, I think we're going to try to pull these guys out. That's why I've kept them here. We may move them to Saudi Arabia to try to keep Saudi Arabia alive from being invaded. Okay, submarine classes have advanced. Very nice. Grayed out. Acoustic. Okay, we could do that. Red HQs. Well, looks like we took out a German submarine. Very good. Yes, you can have energy Belgium. And the government in exile Belgium. Oh, there's a battleship. The Tirpitz is out. Tirpitz is out at sea with a fairly large stack of... Okay, you might have been a problem if you found them. Okay, we're going to put you out here, patrol. We can do passively this. But you, we got some battleships here, so let's do a move order here. If you can catch that, don't know how fast that's going. It may have a bunch of slow transports with it. 20. Oh, wait a minute, we're already in combat with some submarines. It's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to get those battleships sunk. Whatever it is they're transporting. Figuring troops. Keep graph inconclusive. Okay, they're down here. Keep going. Keep moving. Yep. Catch up. Okay, Eastern Bank. Okay, the Tirpitz, and then troop transports. Some basic ones. The Robert Ley. That's similar to the Wilhelm Gustloff cruise ship. Okay. Well, let's see. They're heading back. It looks like. So let's move that way. Okay, another battle. If I can take the Tirpitz out, and I'm presuming there's more than just. Okay, I think I'm killing troops as well as killing. No. As well as killing the troop transports. Oh, he's going back. Okay, damn. All right, come back. We're winning some battles. Okay, he's going up here. Looks like that way. On us here. So what we want to do here is move both of these units off the coast here. I think if I can evacuate out to the sea, that'll be good. A lot faster than he was before, because maybe we've taken out some of his lower vessels. I think he's going this way. Back him. Yeah, he's moving a lot faster than he was. I think he's heading up this way. We'll keep going for the moment. Okay, so these guys are off. Can we evacuate out to the sea here? No. It's those maybe. Okay, civil defense advances. Very nice. That is donation, and we'll let that continue. going to deny, but okay, head back there. Well, at least we took out some of the transports. Fine mercenary unit, not now. Okay, small warship damage control. Yeah, we want you not to sink, so that's good. Yeah, it's too far advanced. We'll do fire control now, so you actually sink other ships. Yes. Now, can you guys... No, I'm still defending here. Oh, good. We had a little battle out in the Red Sea, and we took out 4 long-range submarines. Very nice. And they damaged us a bit. Yeah, it's British. There. Well, okay, I think we're going to end this episode here. I want to thank you all who made it this far. Where are you guys going? No. I don't want you to go over here. I want you to come over to here. Rebase to here. We're going to pick up a new, some more stuff and do another invasion. So, thank you everyone. I do appreciate it. If you haven't, like I say, haven't already, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I will see you next time with more, yes, more Hearts of Iron. Okay, let's save this. Okay, guys, I think we're going to end the live stream for today. I really do appreciate those that hung out with me. I think it was a very interesting talk on Ukraine and Taiwan earlier. Probably not next week, but because I doubt there's going to be any big changes. But I look forward to some more of those as time goes on, as we see some changes, what's going on in that field. So, thank you all. Tomorrow I'll be back playing War Thunder, hopefully with Arno and a few of other you guys. You're all invited to play. So see you tomorrow.